It begins in 1861. I have just inherited the throne of the Netherlands. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 126, Don't do anything if you can talk. The Russians have always been the poorest country in Europe. Even after the systematic transformation of Peter the Great, this has not been fundamentally changed. However, the Russian Empire has always been the largest in terms of land and population in Europe. In the late 18th century, the Russian Empire had a population of 35 million, while France, the second most populous country in Europe, had just exceeded 20 million during the same period. At the beginning of the 18th century, the Russian Empire defeated the Nordic hegemon Sweden and the Central European hegemon Poland in succession through the Northern War, clearing the obstacles to the westward advance into Central Europe. Soon, it divided the sphere of influence with the Austrian Empire in Poland. However, this still did not benefit the lower-class people of the Russian Empire, because the Russian Empire was still blindly expanding outward. This made the Russian Empire even poorer, and in order to support the war expenses, they implemented a cruel agricultural system. Peasants had no land, were burdened with very heavy labor, and the country's surplus output was all collected by the state. Not only that, in the entire 100 years of the 18th century, every farmer had to send a male to serve the Russian emperor for 25 years. This is why so many Russian men were still unmarried in middle age. But the Russian army has always been known for its fierce style. Frederick the Great, the greatest Prussian emperor, once commented on the Russian army, "It takes 2 bullets to kill a Russian soldier, one to knock him down, and the other to shoot him in the head again." The people present listened to Calvin Collins talk, but they felt pressured by the tenacity of the Russian soldiers and his words. How strong are the Dutch soldiers? In terms of willpower and ferocity, can they compare with them? The Russians' military service is long and dangerous, but the peasant system is still willing to send the strongest sons in the family to serve in the army, because in Russia, even if they need to go to the battlefield, it is better than staying at home as serfs. This cruel rule allowed Russia to use labor resources almost free of charge, and long-term slavery also made the Russian army extremely obedient to the orders of the country's upper class. Therefore, the army of the Russian Empire was also ridiculed by the British as the best human-shaped animals in the world. The number of this group of very obedient Russian soldiers remained above 300,000 all year round in the 18th century, roughly equivalent to the sum of the British and French armies in the same period. Some people in the UK have been inspired by this recently and believe that Britain should learn from the Russian practice, so that the size of the British Navy should be the sum of the navies of the second and third countries in the world, which is in line with Britain's current status. Precisely because the number of the Russian army is so large and it is easy to use and loyal enough, in the main line of international relations in Europe in the 18th century, when the two countries formed gangs in Europe, they often formed a situation of equal strength. At this time, whoever can win over the Russian Empire will win the diplomatic victory. For this reason, in the era of Catherine II, the Russian Empire won the reputation of European gendarmerie. However, the Central and Western European countries were originally wary of France, but after Napoleon I was defeated by other countries, the object of their fear shifted to Tsarist Russia. Therefore, Tsarist Russia also became the country that Central and Western European countries were most wary of. Even Emperor Franz I of the Austrian Empire, who was on friendly terms with them on the surface, stabbed Russian Emperor Nicholas I in the back during the Crimean War, causing the Tsarist Russia's ultimate strategy of moving south to fail. So from then on, Tsarist Russia also realized the role of diplomacy and should not act recklessly. Therefore, after Alexander II inherited the throne, he suppressed the Prussian diplomatic advisors in Tsarist Russia and reused pure Slavs. Among them, he appointed Gorchakov, the Tsarist Russian ambassador to France, as the new Tsarist Russian foreign minister. Tsarist Russia began to implement a two-way development strategy of military and diplomacy. However, Tsarist Russia has already set its sights on the Austrian Empire. To be precise, it began to use diplomatic attacks to retaliate against the Austrian Empire. Tsarist Russia is our ally, but to be honest, the other party does exist. There are obstacles to development. However, Europe has never had pure friendship and alliance. When you are weak, you need a stronger backer, just like when we were at the Vienna Peace Conference, we needed the approval of other countries to restore our country. Only when the Netherlands develops itself strong can it prevent it from happening again. Jason Ma, you became the ambassador of the Netherlands to the Austrian Empire last year. You are relatively young among all the Dutch diplomatic envoys. Please tell us about the situation in Austria where you are. I think others are curious about this most powerful country in Central Europe as well. Jason Ma nodded and said, among the 5 major powers in Europe, Austria has weakened from its former leading position to being almost the same as its former younger brother and new rival Prussia. In the eyes of various countries, what they fear most about Austria is not their military strength. What is that? William Ivey asked again for everyone. Jason Ma smiled and replied, it's diplomacy. Austria is most famous for its diplomacy of forming alliances, which I call acrobatic diplomacy. Acrobatic diplomacy, the name attracted everyone's interest. Austria, like Tsarist Russia, is a feudal serfdom country, but the situation in Austria is much more complicated. In terms of geopolitics, Austria is surrounded by Prussia, a newly emerged military power in the north, the giant Tsarist Russian Empire in the east, the Ottoman Empire in the south, which is weakening but still has some strength, and the closest ally, the Kingdom of Bavaria, in the west, which is almost adjacent to France. Within the Austrian Empire, the number of Hungarians and Bohemians is comparable to that of Germans in the Austrian Empire. Any oppressive behavior of the Austrian government is likely to provoke uprisings of other ethnic groups. The financing capacity of the Austrian Empire is not much better than that of the Tsarist Russian Empire, and is even more worrying. The economy is mainly agricultural, and the commodity economy was not worth mentioning in the 18th century. Such a country was simply in the 18th century. Even if it has improved a little now, it is difficult to match Prussia in the north, which has the North German Customs Union as its sphere of influence, in terms of economy. Therefore, the Southern Customs Union is even tangible, but it is not profitable, and it is just a loose alliance. Such an Austrian empire cannot achieve large-scale debt at all, and capital does not believe in their ability to repay debts. Because of this, when Austria's military and economic strength could not match that of other powerful countries, Austria wanted to continue to maintain its status as a great power. Then there was only one choice left: we should not take action if we can talk. The Austrian monarchs and ministers were all outstanding diplomats. During the War of the Austrian Succession, Empress Teresa used the alliance between the previous emperor and the great powers to win over Britain, Russia and other countries to jointly deal with the ambitious Prussia, thus overcoming the difficulties of the weakening period caused by the internal forces. Not long after, during the 7 Years' War, Prime Minister Kaunitz of the Austrian Empire turned enemies into friends with France, and then invited Tsarist Russia to besiege the Anglo-Prussian alliance together with the 3 countries, which forced Britain to retreat. In order to preserve its strength, the remaining Prussia could only humiliatingly respect Austria as its big brother. After the French Revolution, Emperor Franz organized Britain and Prussia to besiege France. My God, except for the nearby Tsarist Russia, the other countries have been used by them in turn. Quotation mark. Chapter 127. A European war is inevitable. Oh my God, except for the nearby Tsarist Russia, they have used the other countries in turn. I even suspect that the foreign policy of the current British Viscount Palmerston was inspired by Kaunitz. Austrian Prime Minister Kaunitz also became a famous diplomat in Europe and the founder of modern European realism diplomacy. Because of his leadership, the changes in the Austrian Empire's diplomatic relations in Europe in the 18th and 19th centuries were almost always driven by Austria. One of his successors, Metternich, is the most famous figure. From the early 19th century to the mid-19th century, he led Austria to become the most powerful country in Europe. Austria may not win every time it forms an alliance, but its superb diplomatic skills allow Austria to always maintain a balance of power with other powers. It is precisely because of the diplomatic maneuvers that the Austrian Empire still sits firmly in the position of the top 5 powers in Europe, despite its obvious lack of hard power. When Jason Ma stopped, others were also very impressed. Austria's foreign policy was so successful that people forgot that they had actually begun to fall into decline and needed to compete with Prussia for the leadership of the German Confederation. William Ivey also felt sad for Austria. It was Xiohe who made him successful and Xiohe who made him fail. Diplomatic skills concealed the fact that Austria was weak, but they could not help Austria become stronger. In the 19th century, the sense of honor and self-preservation led the German nation to launch a vigorous unification movement. In order to save the remnants of the empire, The Austrian Empire stood firmly on the opposite side of the unification of the German nation. In the end, while Britain, France and Russia were busy expanding their colonies, the North, led by Prussia, launched a national uprising and would no longer allow Austria to bargain. Under the strong pressure of Prussia, which had just defeated Denmark, Austria was also pulled in by Prussia to confront the Northern German Confederation and was defeated. Diplomacy could no longer save this paper tiger. After Austria's disastrous defeat in the Austro-Prussian War in 1866, the Kingdom of Bavaria dared not stand up for Austria again and chose to default to Prussia's leadership. As a result, Austria suffered so badly that it was directly kicked out of the German Confederation, a big family of nations. After Prussia defeated France, other countries were intimidated by this and finally accepted to merge into one country. The German Confederation without Austria became the German Empire, and Prussia officially annexed other countries. Austria never had a chance to make a comeback. Seeing that everyone was sighing at the current situation of the Austrian Empire, which once dominated Europe, William IV said, "What has the European hegemony created?" This is a question I raise with everyone. All students of the School of Foreign Affairs must write their own papers on this, and Hespet von will personally review and grade them. The latter nodded, but smiled bitterly in his heart. His Majesty has taken revenge. I'll give you a hint. The tragic struggle for hegemony in Europe did not result in the destruction of human lives. In this process, Europe's military technology, production technology, and governance technology have all developed rapidly. The dramatic changes in society gave birth to modern political ideas. Humanism, citizenship, political freedom, national self-determination, etc. concepts were born in the 18th century and the first half of the 19th century. What impact will these seeds of thought have on the Netherlands, Europe, and the world in the future? Will they eventually change the global political landscape? In terms of international relations, the 5 European powers that won the hegemony in the 18th century dominated the global order in the first half of the 19th century. Although we have to accept the reality that the Netherlands was kicked out of this ranks, reality is reality and we must bow our heads. The rise of Prussia, the decline of the French and Austrian land power, and the expansion of colonies on land and sea by Britain and Russia. Today, the German Confederation is too powerful, and the European powers have little diplomatic space to continue playing balanced diplomacy. We can still use these inferior countries, but building our own strength and growing stronger is the ultimate goal. The Netherlands' repeated external development during this period is the sense of urgency I feel. Before the Netherlands' diplomatic space becomes smaller and smaller, or even closed, we need to obtain enough benefits so that we can develop on our own and face any major country without relying on others. Ladies and gentlemen, the Netherlands is too small, so it is difficult to develop. Even if it develops, it is also easy to be destroyed. After all, the Netherlands is a low-lying plain. Such a place is fertile, but it is difficult to defend, and there are many major countries around it. Therefore, in this course of the Diplomatic Academy, what I just wanted to tell you is that the future plan of the Kingdom of the Netherlands and I is to develop Europe and the Far East in parallel. This is the European store and that is the Far East factory. We will develop scientific and technological strength in the Far East, including weapons research and development, urban construction, military strength, etc. The Far East is the most advanced, and the local side will use the Far East's secondary retaliation capability to remind European countries not to have ambitious ideas about the Netherlands. The purpose of the alliance with France and Prussia is to establish a relaxed diplomatic relationship with the surrounding areas. Going north to form an alliance with Sweden is to leave a way for the Netherlands to retreat northward. Many people do not understand why we are arguing and making peace with Britain now. In fact, it is also a reminder to France, Prussia and other countries that we have not forced ourselves into a situation of mortal enemy with Britain. If the two countries have ambitions for the Netherlands, then the British mainland is also a transit station for the Netherlands to retreat. In short, the European mainland is the signboard of the Netherlands. For actual development, we still need the Far East because there is enough strategic depth there. Everyone is learning diplomacy. Compared with the current land area of the Netherlands in the Far East, you should have a clear idea. There, the East Indies, New Guinea, Hawaiian Islands, South Pacific Islands, etc., plus the newly joined Australia, their area is more than 200 times that of the Netherlands. Ignoring the people in the audience who are gasping for air, he continued, in addition to Africa, which no one pays attention to now, We are actually not much weaker than the three countries of Britain, Russia and France in terms of area. Therefore, what the Netherlands needs now is not to expand new territories, but how to calm down and develop these existing resources. We need to keep up with the world trend in population development, economic scale and technology, and even go one step further than them. This is the future direction of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. The development of the Far East is the key development direction of the Kingdom of the Netherlands in the next 50 years. According to the current conflicts accumulated by various countries, a European war is inevitable. The Far East is where we can preserve our strength, and it is also an opportunity for us to rise again. Chapter 128 Dutch East Policy 1862 is a significant day for the Dutch education sector. The four top Dutch universities, together with the heads of 6 other famous Dutch institutions, officially announced in Amsterdam that the 10 top Dutch universities will establish branch campuses in the Far East to train top university talents for the Netherlands. Leiden University President Lini announced that the university will establish a Far East branch campus in Jakarta, Java Province, with an annual enrollment of more than 1,000 students. As long as they are Dutch nationals, they can enroll regardless of their skin color after graduating from high school and passing the exam. Amsterdam University President Barlow announced that a branch campus will be established in Melbourne, William Province, Australia, the deputy capital of the Netherlands. Groningen University President Chart announced that the university will establish a branch campus in Sydney. The branch campus announced by Utrecht University President Vassi was surprising. He chose the western part of New Guinea to build a branch campus in Maden, Bird of Paradise Peninsula, Irian Jaya Province. On the same day, other Dutch universities including Haan University, Agricultural University of the Netherlands, University of The Hague, Wageningen University, Free University of Amsterdam, Delft University of Technology, and Eindhoven University of Technology also participated in the Far East Education Plan. Haan University of the Netherlands announced that it would establish a branch campus in Surabaya, the second largest city in Java Province. The Agricultural University of the Netherlands announced that it would establish a branch campus in Brisbane, the capital of Queensland Province in Eastern Australia, focusing on agricultural development. The University of The Hague chose to build a branch campus in Adelaide, the capital of South Australia. The Free University of Amsterdam established a branch campus in Makassar, the capital of Sulawesi Province, and Wageningen University established a branch campus in Palembang, the capital of Sumatra Island. The Delft University of Technology branch campus was established in Perth, the capital of Western Australia. Eindhoven University of Technology established a branch campus in Darwin, the capital of the Northern Province. Ruud Bales, the Minister of Education of the Netherlands, announced that the Dutch government will strongly support the establishment of branch campuses by these universities. To this end, the government will unify the planning of land use rights for the campuses. These campuses will have preferential policies for obtaining land use rights. They will also be able to obtain subsidies from the Dutch government for the construction of campuses. The Dutch government will also provide employment guarantees for the talents of these schools. He said that the Netherlands pays attention to the development of the Far East, so this is the reason why all major universities have a collectively established branches in the Far East to cultivate top talents. This is the result of the Dutch government's recent request to provide all possible efforts for the development of the Far East, said Lindsay, the president of Leiden University, the highest-ranked university in the Netherlands, when interviewed by reporters. Hello, I'm Kurt, a reporter from the European Times. I'd like to ask President Lini, since the Netherlands has already started to implement the construction of such a large-scale campus of top universities in the Far East, why haven't we received any news about the announcement of the Dutch government before? Have we only been notified recently? If so, then our view now is that these measures of the Dutch government are a bit hasty. Lini enjoys the feeling of being questioned by reporters, because at this time, he feels that he is the focus of everyone, and he is leading Leiden University to sprint higher in the world university rankings, so he is ready to use this opportunity of questioning by reporters to advertise Leiden University. It will also be easier to recruit students at that time. Have you forgotten that when we announced the news just now, we actually had a strict plan? The presidents of our 10 Dutch universities actually have a meeting every month. This is a tea party hosted by the government, requiring all universities to follow the latest government policies and implement education strategies in line with policy strategies. Therefore, the haste you mentioned just now is impossible, because this is something that has been planned for a long time within the government. We have also been asked many times about professional issues. Leiden University has been looking for a location in the Far East for a long time. Finally, Java Province was chosen to establish a constituency. Can I ask you why you are interested in Java Province? Lini smiled, because it is the most densely populated place in the Far East and has abundant student resources. But there are so many indigenous people there, will it cause trouble? Of course, but our motto of that branch is to establish the most equal ethnic campus in the Netherlands, and also to provide the most direct contribution to the unity and patriotism within the Netherlands. But will they be unable to keep up with the learning progress of local students? This is exactly what we educators need to consider. Therefore, the move that the Minister of Education just announced to support the various branch campuses has actually declared that the primary education model will be enforced there, just like the local area. According to what the minister said, as long as it is within the territory of the Netherlands, everyone will be a valuable resource of the Netherlands, including the natives who are also our compatriots. What do you think? Seeing this, Lini knew that he had succeeded. The brand of Leiden University will be popular, especially in the Far East, which will win the peak of the moral field. Maybe the natives there will even regard Leiden University as the university they most yearn for and have a sense of identity. Seeing Lini like this, others naturally did not retreat. They all invested in promoting the advantages of their own universities, and even the two technical universities were no exception. Because the Far East currently has a small local population, the competition for talent has always been very cruel, and the source of students is the most fiercely competitive object of each university. The government is also eager for such competition to continue, because it will increase the competitiveness of these schools. It is said that the World University Rankings published by the European Times every 6 months will be announced soon. I just don't know how many Dutch universities are ranked in the top 30 in this latest ranking. It's exciting to think about it. In addition to these top universities in the Netherlands, many people have also seen in major Dutch newspapers that major companies have begun to follow government policies and announced the construction of branch factories in the former Far East. Among them, the largest William Group in the Netherlands, controlled by William IV, announced that it will increase investment in the Far East Java Province by more than 5 million Dutch guilders, and increase rubber planting and processing factories in the Far East to provide more resources for the Dutch rubber industry. At the same time, the group also announced that it would build world-class ports like the Port of Amsterdam and Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Darwin, Perth, Adelaide, Surabaya, Jakarta, Makassar, and build subnational level port terminals in Port Moresby, Lampung, Palembang, Kupang, Dili, etc., to provide large cargo ships with docking, loading and unloading and transshipment of goods. The scale of shipping in various parts of the Far East will be rapidly developed. The group also announced that it will establish a coal exploration company and development company in Queensland, Australia, and a steel exploration company in Western Australia. At the same time, a clothing company and a large-scale wool clothing factory will be established in Sydney. Equipment manufacturing factories will be built in Melbourne. The group claims that these investments will not be less than 100 million Dutch guilders, £4 million, in total investment, which will drive more than 500,000 jobs in the Far East. As if not wanting to let the William Group take the cake, other major Dutch groups also moved closer to the government's obvious policy of developing the Far East. Dutch consortiums and nobles with a little money could not help but follow the government's eastward development strategy to invest, and the number of jobs has already reached more than 200,000. As long as the investment is in place, it can bring 700,000 jobs. Calculated based on a family of 4, this can support nearly 3 million people. In short, in this Netherlands, an atmosphere has been created, that is, the Dutch territory in the Far East has great potential, and when the local Dutch heard about it, it once again aroused the fourth wave of immigration. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 129, Prince Edward's Jealousy. Europe is big, but not small. Any disturbance will attract the attention of various countries and become the international focus. The Netherlands is in a mess now. How can it cover up the crazy investment in the Far East? What's more, the Dutch government has never thought of covering it up. I didn't expect that the Netherlands would attach so much importance to the Far East. It is said that the Netherlands has implemented many investment plans there, which can employ more than 700,000 workers. If all are implemented, the Netherlands in the Far East will enter the fast lane of development, and the Netherlands will have a large hinterland. By then, the Netherlands' qualifications as a great power will be very different from now, and the country's potential will be greatly improved. Your Highness, we must be careful of William IV. This is a little lion that is growing vigorously. Be careful that if it grows too big, it will bite people in the end. Disraeli looked at Crown Prince Edward and said with a worried look. Crown Prince Edward's face darkened, and then he said dissatisfiedly, "It's all Mother's fault for trusting Viscount Palmerston too much. I believe that his indulgence of the Netherlands has made the Netherlands more and more powerful. Now, in just a short year, it has developed to this extent. If it is not curbed in the future, it is very likely to threaten our British Empire's position in the Far East, and even the Indian subcontinent will be affected by the development of the Netherlands." The Crown Prince is right. The East Indies is not far from the Indian subcontinent. If the development of the East Indies is really fast enough, then it will definitely have a siphon effect on the indigenous people of India. By then, many Indians may run to the East Indies or even Australia. By then, it is possible that the international status of the Netherlands will be greatly enhanced. Disraeli said worriedly, "This is not in our interests. A strong Netherlands is a threat to Britain. But the Whigs are supporting the Netherlands in this direction, either openly or secretly. Their motives are really unclear." After he finished speaking, he saw that Crown Prince Edward was on the verge of exploding with anger, so he seized the opportunity to say, "By the way, Your Highness, I have been in contact with members of the Danish cabinet recently. It is said that the Danish royal family is now ambiguous about arranging a meeting between Princess Alexandra and the Crown Prince in the Kingdom of Belgium. This is worth pondering." Crown Prince Edward was shocked and looked at Disraeli in disbelief. How is it possible? The small kingdom of Denmark relied on Britain to prevent other countries from pursuing responsibility for Denmark's surrender to Napoleon I. Now it dares to disrespect Britain. Seeing that Crown Prince Edward was increasingly unwilling to control his emotions, Disraeli added fuel to the fire and said, "Yes, I don't quite understand what the Danes think, but I heard that it was because of William IV. William IV. Crown Prince Edward didn't want to mention him the most now, but he had to say it, so he said, "What does it have to do with him? I told you to pretend." Still pretending. Disraeli sighed and said, "It is said that King Frederick VI of Denmark thinks highly of William IV, so he intends to bring Denmark and the Netherlands closer together." "How do we bring them closer together?" Prince Edward asked tremblingly. At this point, although he already understood what Disraeli meant, he still asked without giving up. At the same time, in Buckingham Palace, someone's face soon turned pale. Queen Victoria sighed, "Alice, I originally wanted to marry you to the Dutch royal family. William IV is a good destination, so last time, I arranged for Helena and Louise to accompany you to Amsterdam to attend the European Royal Family Dating Conference, and even arranged for Viscount Palmerston to support you. Unfortunately, it was not what we wanted, and it was interrupted by other things." Princess Alice's face showed a moment of shyness when she heard this, and her head lowered a little. Princess Helena, who was standing next to her, changed her face greatly, lowered her head quickly, and showed serious dissatisfaction in her eyes, but she did not dare to express any thoughts, because from childhood to adulthood, the person she was most afraid of was her mother, Queen Victoria. Louise was very calm, as if she had nothing to do with it. Although she had concealed it well, the Queen was so smart that she could see through the little tricks of the few people. She couldn't help but shake her head and smile bitterly. None of these children were worry-free. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but think of Prince Edward. That guy has been too close to the Tories recently. This is not a good thing. A king should have his own position. Although he can't be impartial, he must be completely self-centered. The two major parties are not easy to deal with. Edward sometimes shows his emotions on his face, and it is too easy for others to take advantage of him. Forget it, he is still young, so just treat it as a kind of experience. Moreover, the British Empire can also give Edward the capital to experience. She was about to tell a few people about the precautions of other royal members in the palace, but a guard quickly came to the royal matron and whispered to her, and the royal matron walked in quickly. She first glanced at Princess Alice, and said to the Queen with concern, "Your Majesty, the Kingdom of the Netherlands and the Kingdom of Denmark have just jointly released a piece of news." Queen Victoria didn't care and continued knitting a sweater, and asked, "What news?" The housekeeper said sternly, "The two countries announced that they will marry." Marriage. The action in her hand stopped instantly, her face changed slightly, and her eyes revealed a threatening light, looking at the housekeeper. Princess Alice's face turned pale. Princess Helena looked at the housekeeper in disbelief. Princess Louise also stared at the housekeeper. Queen Victoria asked, "Doesn't Frederick VI have a daughter?" "Yes." Princess Alice and the others also looked at her in confusion. The housekeeper smiled bitterly and said, "Yes, it is said that the object of the marriage is that the daughter of Crown Prince Christian of Denmark, Princess Alexandra, will marry William IV." Bang! Princess Alice leaned back on the seat weakly, but fortunately Princess Louise reacted quickly and helped her. Finally, Princess Alice pushed away Princess Louise's help, showing determination on her face and showing everyone a nonchalant smile. However, will the people here believe it? Princess Alexandra? Queen Victoria was dissatisfied. She is the Danish royal family member that Edward has been thinking about for some time. The housekeeper nodded and said, "Yes, His Royal Highness Crown Prince Edward also has a good impression of this princess. It is said that some time ago, he asked Princess Victoria to help him to have a formal meeting in the Belgian royal family, but it is said that Princess Alexandra refused. Frederick VI also had an unclear attitude. Unexpectedly, Denmark and the Netherlands had already had the idea of marriage." Chapter 130, Journey to the Far East. 1862. The Dutch Ministry of Education announced that this day of each year is the Teachers' Day of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, which is a kind of respect for all teachers who have contributed to the cause of education. On this day of Teachers' Day, the Netherlands requires schools to give all teachers and students a day off. This novel Teachers' Day caused a sensation all over the world, including European countries. This is a very creative way of publicity. I admit that I am conquered by the practice of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. We in Sweden have also decided to make this day a holiday for all Swedish teachers, because their hard work in educating the flowers of the future country is worthy of this honor. The Swedish Prime Minister of Justice, Louis de Geer, made the above statement just after the Swedish Parliament passed the proposal to recognize Teachers' Day. Not only Sweden, but also Carl Christian Hall, chairman of the Government Council of Denmark, announced that September 10th is the country's Teachers' Day. Many people have doubts about the three countries. After all, it is understandable if Sweden follows the Netherlands, but Denmark also follows suit, which seems to be confusing. Unfortunately, this doubt was soon resolved. On September 12, 1862, the Dutch royal family and the Danish royal family announced that the two countries would enter into a marriage alliance, and the object was that William IV would marry Princess Alexandra, the eldest daughter of Crown Prince Christian of Denmark. The engagement would take place on January 20, 1863. The wedding was held 6 months later on July 1, 1863. This news caused a commotion. You know, as early as the Royal Blind Date Conference held in Amsterdam, it was rumored that the British Crown Prince Edward fell in love with a Danish princess at first sight. From then until now, this news has never stopped. Many people envy Alexandra for flying up the tree and becoming a phoenix. It was really good luck to be favored by Crown Prince Edward. So Alexandra became the object of envy of European noblewomen. Of course, many people envy the good fortune of Prince Edward, because in London, there have been rumors that he lives an undisciplined life. Now he has set his sights on the most beautiful princess in Denmark. He is about to succeed. Some people envy her future, while others feel sorry that she will fall into the hands of an undisciplined person. Unexpectedly, someone came out to snatch the love of Prince Edward, making all his previous efforts go to waste. As the news of Princess Alexandra and William IV's engagement spread to all parts of the world, many people envied Princess Alexandra even more. It actually caused the British Crown Prince and the King of the Netherlands to be jealous. How much charm does that require? A craze for Alexandra suddenly swept across Europe. Her dressing and makeup became the trend of royal women in various countries. Especially in the European market, there are many clothes of the same style that are so popular that they are out of stock. All countries have made their own judgments on the impact of this marriage. What is the Netherlands trying to do? They know clearly that Prussia will launch an attack on the Kingdom of Denmark in Schleswig and Holstein, But William IV is now making an alliance with Denmark first. Does the Netherlands want to help Denmark deal with us in the future? Your Majesty, some things seem ordinary, but in fact they are weird. William IV likes to play mysterious tricks to maintain his power. This is their consistent style of the Netherlands. Even the ambassador to Prussia, Nicholas Pearson, has a consistent foreign policy. We only need to develop ourselves, with a momentum of hegemony and kingly way, then no matter how many diplomatic skills the Netherlands has, it will be in vain. That means we remain silent, neither opposing nor supporting, because some countries will be more anxious than us. Okay, then let's do as the Prime Minister said. The speakers were William I, the King of Prussia, and the country's Prime Minister Bismarck. But Your Majesty, we have to prevent Denmark from forming a true alliance with Sweden and the Netherlands. After all, Sweden and Denmark have already reconciled, but they still have conflicts over the leadership of the Kalmar Union. But if the Netherlands joins, then there will be a chemical effect in this alliance, which may be revived, and the three countries will form a stable pattern. At that time, we will have more pressure in the west and the north. Perhaps it is because of this that the Netherlands will promote the alliance with Sweden. If they come to win over Denmark again, it is obvious that the Netherlands should be playing for this purpose. Prime Minister, has the Netherlands forgotten that the Netherlands, Prussia and France are also allies? Do they want to eat both ends? It's hard to say that they eat both ends. At least the French Empire doesn't care, because when we formed an alliance, we just used each other to oppose Britain and make trouble together. It's just to take advantage of the situation. If the Netherlands quarrels and reconciles with Britain, they will gain many benefits, but we don't get much benefit. Therefore, this alliance has actually reduced a lot of effects. Did the joint action in Africa gain us many colonies? Then if we do this with Spain, the effect will be the same, right? William I was stunned when he heard this. Bismarck's statement puzzled him. He was the one who advocated the alliance at the beginning, but now. Bismarck saw this and explained, Your Majesty, the environment has changed, and we also need to change with the times. The Netherlands has walked out of the diplomatic dilemma of being hostile to Britain. It even put forward a slogan to develop the Far East, and even a deputy capital has come out. This proves that the country has begun to focus on the Far East. A person's energy is limited, and a country's financial resources are also limited. Therefore, these actions of the Netherlands all prove that it will reduce resource investment in Europe. For us Prussia, it is not clear whether it is good or bad at present, but the effect of the Triple Alliance has actually been reduced invisibly. As the protagonist of this incident, he had already left Amsterdam and boarded the Dutch fleet bound for the Far East. Peter, the size of the Navy must be developed faster. Only when the Navy is built fast enough can we protect our assets. William IV said expectantly, Australia and the original Dutch East Indies are vast, and the coastal areas involved in the sea are the largest in the world. If there is no strong Navy to protect them, then no matter how fast and how well the economy develops, it will eventually be nothing more than a wedding dress for others. William IV was sitting on the Rotterdam, one of the two first-class sailing battleships of the Dutch home fleet. There were more than 10 other battleships of various levels accompanying him. This fleet is already half of the maritime strength of the Dutch home fleet. In addition to the Minister of the Navy Jan Peter, the Minister of the Army Peter de Jong also came this time. In addition to them, there were also the Director of the Netherlands International Intelligence Agency Mackay Sean, the Minister of Industry Wim Coat, the Minister of Education Ruud Bels, the Chief Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs Venus, the Chief of Army Staff Job Il, etc. The rest of them stayed in the Netherlands. Jan Peter was delighted when he heard this, which showed that His Majesty still attached great importance to the Navy, so the Finance Minister next year should be able to relax the financial constraints. So he hurriedly said, Your Majesty, I think the Navy should be vigorously developed. The Netherlands is now developing and building everywhere. Every item here is vital to the Netherlands and cannot be lost. So, I think Your Majesty is right. The Army Chief of Staff Job Il was a little envious of the Navy. Your Majesty is trying to relieve the Navy's financial constraints. When will it be the Army's turn? Chapter 131, The Wise Princess Alexandra. When William IV was sitting on the Dutch fleet heading to the Far East and just past Portugal, two people who were dissatisfied with his marriage with Denmark were making a surprise visit to Denmark. At the Danish Crown Prince's residence, Crown Prince Christy of Denmark and his Crown Princess Princess Louise of Hesse-Kassel were introducing some of Denmark's customs and practices to Crown Prince Frederick of Prussia and his Crown Princess Victoria with friendly smiles on their faces. The four of them all had relaxed and happy expressions on their faces. During the conversation, they were close to each other, as if they were good friends who had known each other for a long time. Next to Crown Prince Christian and Princess Louise were their 19-year-old eldest son, Prince Frederick, and 18-year-old eldest daughter, Princess Alexandra. The other children were underage, so they did not attend today's welcome banquet. During the period, Princess Victoria secretly looked at Princess Alexandra several times, secretly sighing at her beauty. In September, which was neither too cold nor too hot, Princess Alexandra wore a flowing white dress with green accessories, which made her look pure and noble. Her agile figure made people feel that she had integrated into the Danish crown prince's residence, which was naturally comfortable with the greenery. Her long black hair was slender and smooth. Although it was simply combed, it had an indescribable charm in its simplicity. Her eyes were bright and clear, deep and dark, with endless wisdom. Her high nose and simple makeup made her lips look naturally bright red. Her ordinary facial features formed a beautiful appearance as calm as water, coupled with her skin as white as jade, which was as peaceful as the moon in the still water, and as pure as if she was not on the world. The gentleness of the ladies of the European royal family and the agility of the little jade girl were perfectly combined in her, and she was so beautiful that people could not find a single flaw. Wow, Crown Prince Christian and Princess Louise are so lucky. Although I haven't met the other four princesses and princes, the two in front of me and Frederick are amazed. From the two princesses and princes in front of us, we can see what they looked like in the past, Princess Victoria exclaimed. Frederick was naturally very familiar with his wife. Although he didn't understand what she wanted to express, he might as well make the same words of praise for them. However, seeing his wife looking at Alexandra from time to time, he understood why she made such an exclamation. Crown Prince Frederick had also seen many beautiful people, but he had to admit that the daughter born by Christian was so beautiful. In his memory, he really couldn't find a few who could compare with her. Of course, Princess Victoria didn't count. Hearing this, Alexandra smiled back generously, but it didn't seem artificial, which surprised Crown Prince Frederick. Thinking that she was indeed the woman that William IV had chosen, she was extraordinary. Prince Frederick also smiled, but his face showed humility. You two's praise will give them more capital to be arrogant with me in the future, so it's better to praise less, Princess Louisa said slowly, but she resolved the embarrassment for her children. This made Princess Victoria pay attention to her. She was indeed a princess of a country, even though she was only a princess of the Grand Duchy of Hesse, and could not be compared with her, a legitimate princess of the British Empire, and even in terms of status, she was not as good as the princess of the kingdom, but no one would think that intelligence would be linked to status. Princess Louise was joking. Looking at their appearance, I think they are too low-key and will have a counter effect. The previous conversation opened up the conversation box, so Princess Victoria took the opportunity to say, I originally wanted to introduce Alexandra to Edward, but I didn't expect that William IV of the Netherlands would come out in the middle. Several people changed color, but Princess Victoria continued, I don't understand why Edward lost. In terms of status, which crown prince in the world is more noble than him? Which king will have more power than him after he succeeds to the throne? Who can match the power he holds at that time? Haha, if such a crown prince with great potential is kicked out, I have some doubts about the unreasonableness of this, but I can't find the reason. I think Her Majesty Queen Victoria in Buckingham Palace will also be very puzzled. It's because I can't figure out the reason. Will she be angry and affect the relationship between Britain and Denmark? Do you think my guess will happen? But it is very likely that it will not happen. After all, none of us is Queen Victoria. But I am familiar with my mother. After all, I have been her unofficial secretary and I know her very well. If she thinks it is unreasonable, she will definitely find out the reason. If she is not satisfied, she will definitely do something crazy. At that time, the relationship between Denmark and Britain will definitely be shaken. During the whole process, Crown Prince Frederick did not interrupt, but just watched his wife's wonderful performance indifferently. At the same time, he remembered the warning given by his father, King William I of Prussia, to his opponent, that Crown Prince of Prussia was from France, not Britain, and asked him to understand his position and interests, and not to be a yes man of Britain, nor a son-in-law of Britain. He could not help but look at Crown Prince Christian and his two children opposite, but to his surprise, Crown Prince Christian and his wife's faces changed slightly, and his son, Prince Frederick, also changed drastically, but Princess Alexandra did not. She seemed not to be affected at all. Unable to resist his curiosity, he joined his wife's team. Actually, I think it's not bad for Princess Alexandra to marry Crown Prince Edward. After all, the door of a big country is still good, isn't it, Crown Prince Christian? Christian, this. Princess Louise also looked embarrassed. You two have come from afar, and the whole of Denmark is very welcome, Alexandra suddenly said at this time. However, I heard that you two are here as the Crown Prince and Crown Princess of Prussia. Since when did you need to dispatch the Crown Prince and Princess of Prussia to matchmake for British princes and princesses? This makes people think about it. They will discuss what position you two hold between Britain and Prussia. It is said that many people in the Kingdom of Prussia are very disgusted with the British meddling in Prussia. I wonder, Your Royal Highness Crown Prince Frederick and Princess Victoria, what do you think? Chapter 132, Crown Prince Christian hardens. Princess Victoria's eyes showed a fierce look. Dissatisfaction filled her face. After staring at Alexandra for a while, she said to her husband, Crown Prince Frederick, self-deprecatingly, it seems that we are indeed too obsessed with close relations with Britain, so that even people from countries other than Prussia know that we are pro-British, but... Princess Victoria turned her eyes back to Crown Prince Christian and his wife, and said with a smile, Denmark is also famous for being pro-British. I just don't know what the consequences will be for Denmark, which has been removed from the list of countries with close relations with Britain. Is Princess Victoria threatening on behalf of Britain? Christian stood by his daughter without hesitation. Although he admitted that he was very afraid of things and did not want to offend the major powers, he also loved his children very much. For this reason, although he could not give up everything, of course, that was the last step. What if this is a threat? Crown Prince Frederick also stood by his wife without hesitation. At this moment, Crown Prince Christian's face was also extremely solemn. Britain and Denmark were already under infinite pressure, which almost suffocated them. Now with Crown Prince Frederick's statement, the situation has become even more serious. It was difficult to deal with Britain alone, not to mention the Kingdom of Prussia, which was not much weaker and was a close neighbor. If Denmark really went against them, it would be difficult for Denmark to survive. Princess Louise saw her husband Christian's pale face and understood how much pressure he was under. Prince Frederick was full of anxiety. After all, he was young and impatient, and it showed on his face. But it was Alexandra who said, You two are guests from afar. If you seem to be bullying the host, you are not a good guest. This time, before Princess Victoria could speak, Crown Prince Frederick said, King William IV has good taste, and Princess Alexandra is also good. You two are a good match. Before Princess Victoria could get angry, Crown Prince Frederick said, But Victoria is right. Edward is deeply in love with you, but you flirted with William IV and even wanted to get engaged. This is very unfair to Edward. And Victoria's purpose for this visit is actually understandable. After all, people outside are saying that you and Edward are in love, so he put his image in the media. Now, with a series of engagements and marriages between you and William IV, the news has been announced to the public. Think about it, how will Edward face the outside world's sarcasm against him in the future? This is not only related to the loss of dignity of a royal family member, but also to the damage of the British national image. Therefore, as the eldest princess of the United Kingdom, Victoria is like a mother, and it is not difficult to understand why she cares so much about her brother. It is more reasonable for you to ask him, who came here on Edward's behalf, to understand the reasons for Edward's failed love. As Crown Prince Frederick finished speaking, everyone was very quiet. Crown Prince Christian of Denmark was even more silent. Yes, a person who failed in love also needs to understand his mistakes. What's wrong with that? He even asked his sister Princess Victoria to come and understand the situation. What a deep sister-brother relationship. So, they all turned their eyes to Alexandra. At this moment, even Frederick and his wife looked at Alexandra, as if they were waiting to see her reason. If what the Crown Prince said is true, then do all the people in the world who have a crush on someone need to be responsible for anything the person they have a crush on does? In order to take care of his emotions, you need to make some concessions that others think you should feel guilty about. Even if it goes against your inner thoughts, you have to appease them first, Alexandra said sarcastically. If that's the case, Then so many people in the world want to be kings. Do kings of various countries need to serve others? That way, the dissatisfaction of those who feel they are riding on them will be eliminated. But Crown Prince Frederick, if that were the case, the world would have been in chaos a long time ago. You're making specious arguments. I find that Princess Alexandra is not only beautiful, but also sharp-tongued. Princess Victoria pressed further. In any case, Denmark knew that the marriage with the Netherlands would cause dissatisfaction in Britain, but it still did this. I don't know if Denmark's international environment can continue to be maintained with the deterioration of Anglo-Denmark relations. I think Crown Prince Christian should consider whether this is a problem. Princess Victoria woke Crown Prince Christian up and told him to be careful of the feuds that caused the countries to become hostile. That is what a king should worry about the most. However, I think that the cooperation between Britain and Denmark is mutually beneficial, not a one-way concession. Therefore, if Britain believes that Denmark is not suitable to be Britain's core cooperation partner, then, Crown Prince Christian said firmly, I think the Russian Empire is also a good cooperation partner. The Navy of St. Petersburg actually wanted to cross the Øresund Strait without taxation a long time ago. The Danish cabinet has actually loosened this idea. Crown Princess, Denmark has no choice but to form an alliance with Tsarist Russia. In fact, it is also a good way to make friends with distant countries and attack nearby ones. What do you think? Frederick and his wife were shocked and looked at Crown Prince Christian in disbelief. They did not expect that Crown Prince Christian, who has always been known for his weakness, dared to say this. Denmark has obtained one of the greatest security guarantees by being semi-aligned with Britain, but as he said, Britain has indeed gained huge security benefits, because Britain has obtained a treaty in Europe after Belgium that allows British warships to temporarily dock in Copenhagen for naval supplies and repairs. If Denmark suddenly stopped giving Britain such treatment, then Denmark would be a region that the British could not set foot in from the Norwegian Sea. That would be a huge loss for Britain, and the Navy would only be able to wander in the open sea, which would reduce the power of all countries. So in this way, the British government would not easily deny the benefits of continuing to maintain this relationship with Denmark. Britain retreated and Tsarist Russia came up, which was definitely not acceptable to Britain. Because this meant that Britain's strategic interests were retreating, while Tsarist Russia was one step closer to the British mainland. Crown Prince Frederick also looked at Crown Prince Christian in a complicated way. Prussia would also be affected by Tsarist Russia's establishment of a seaport next to it. This was a huge loss for Prussia. He knew that Bismarck and his men had always been dissatisfied with Denmark and were ambitious. If Denmark really introduced the Tsarist Russian Empire, it would definitely be a disastrous consequence for Bismarck's plan, and the plan needed to be completely rejected. Therefore, he was silent. Alexandra looked at her father curiously. It was rare to see her father being tough, so there was still a little excitement in her heart. Okay, you two are guests. Christian, let's stop here, we need to have a dinner. It is said that His Majesty will come to attend later at this time. Princess Louise broke the atmosphere and stood up at the right time to ease the atmosphere. Good, you two, let's go. The banquet is about to begin on the Dutch African fleet that had sailed to Africa. William IV did not know that the impromptu confrontation that Denmark had just had with him had ended, and he was now more interested in the planning of the Far East. If Australia builds a railway, it will bring huge opportunities for jobs and consumption. Chapter 133 Australia's Rail Ambitions. The construction of railways in Australia has begun to be planned. This is the roadmap. To get rich, we must first build roads. If there is no land transportation artery that can drive the two places, it will be difficult for the inland economic development to rise relying solely on sea transportation, and security is not optimistic. After all, to be honest, Britain's world's #1 navy is not a vegetarian. They are at the northern end of the Indian Ocean because the Indian subcontinent almost extends to the center of the Indian Ocean. When the two countries are at odds, there is no reason to prove that Britain will not attack Dutch industrial bases and cities, including Australia and the East Indies. One attacks and the other defends, and the ground to attack can be chosen by others at will, but defense requires comprehensive coverage. The Navy can come and go freely, and without convenient land transportation, we are afraid that our Navy will be exhausted and desperate, but it will be of no avail. William IV's words made sense. A thief can only steal for 1,000 days, but you can never guard against thieves for 1,000 days. Everyone looked at the Australian railway planning map that William IV had already prepared. However, when they looked at the Australian map, The simple few strokes on it likely shocked them. Why? Because William Ivey's railway construction route plan was too huge, so huge that it was suffocating. I saw that this area, which had been outlined by William Ivey, started from Perth, the capital of Western Australia in the west, and went east to Adelaide, the capital of South Australia. After arriving here, it seemed to be the central intersection of Australia's railways. The first fork was to go directly east from the middle to Sydney, the capital of New South Wales. The second fork went southeast and south to Melbourne, the capital and deputy capital of William Province. The third fork went north from Adelaide through Alice Springs, the central city of Australia, to Darwin, the capital of Northern Australia. The other branch of Alice Springs in the middle leads to Townsville, the second largest city in Queensland in the northeast. Don't think that William Ivey's ambition for an Australia's railway is limited to this. That would be a big mistake, because he also has a coastal railway. In addition to the east-west Perth in the south, passing through Adelaide to Melbourne in the southeast, there is also Perth along the seaside to Darwin. And Melbourne goes north through Sydney, Bruce, Townsville. Then go west to Darwin. It's like a circle with a vertical in the middle. The upper half of this vertical has two lines extending to both sides at 30 degrees east and 45 degrees west. After reading this plan, everyone's eyes fell on the Minister of Industry Wm. Code and the Deputy Minister of Finance Tom. The former is okay, at least he only takes astronomical data that requires industrial materials. Although the task is arduous, it is also a huge job. But the latter, like other people in the Ministry of Finance, changed his face for money. Tom smiled bitterly and said, "Your Majesty, the available balance of the Ministry of Finance is insufficient now. Let alone building so many railways, our financial resources cannot keep up with the construction of a circle around the three cities of Melbourne, Sydney and Adelaide in the southeast. These three places alone need to build thousands of kilometers. No, this is not a discussion, but an order." William Ivey said seriously, "Look, what is this? You will understand. This time it is no longer a plan, but a newspaper, and there are many wrinkles on it, indicating that this newspaper has been around for some time." When they saw an English newspaper, they were stunned at first, and then wrinkled. At this time, the popular language in Europe was French, which was the language of the upper class of Europe. English was just rising. Most people basically knew some French, and English was rarely involved. However, there were also people who knew it. Among them, Venus, the Chief Deputy Minister of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and Jan Peter, the Minister of the Navy, were familiar with it because of business reasons. So he explained the above content to everyone. After listening, everyone was stunned. 3,100 kilometers, a new railway across North America. Even Tom, the Deputy Minister of Finance of the Netherlands, was stunned. "Venus, are you sure you didn't see it wrong?" Tom couldn't help asking again. But he regretted asking after that, because he saw the clear Arabic numerals above, and the 6 zeros after 3 and 1 were absolutely correct. If you don't believe me, don't you believe Jan Peter, the Minister of the Navy? Hearing this, Tom turned to William Ivey and said, "Your Majesty, is the United States crazy? With so much investment, won't it lose everything?" "Lose everything?" William Ivey shook his head. "The security of a country is more important than any monetary assessment, not to mention that this also involves the United States' grand strategy for ruling the country." Seeing everyone looking over, full of curiosity, William Ivey sighed. "Have you forgotten who the real original owner of America is? Indians." Several exclamations were heard. Venus, the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, had his mind working quickly, and soon he came up with a lot of ideas and found the answer that was about to come out under the context provided by His Majesty. So he looked at William Ivey in shock, and the latter nodded to him. Venus couldn't help showing a look of surprise, and finally sighed, "President Lincoln of the United States is too big and too wild." Seeing everyone's confusion, he explained, "Ladies and gentlemen, Your Majesty's newspaper said that on August 20th, 1862, President Lincoln of the North of the United States announced that they would build a railway across the east and west ends of the United States during the Civil War. This is the news reported in the newspaper just now, and it has been almost a month. It is normal to build a railway, but everyone should not forget that the entire United States is divided into east and west. Except for the coastal areas, the west is almost the territory of the Native American Indians. The northern industrial United States has obviously been influenced by the south, and it can no longer tolerate the unexpected factors below, but instead kill them. If my guess is correct, it is true that the United States wants to build this east-west railway across the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, but the ultimate goal is also to build this railway to separate the entire West into North and South, and further divide the Indian territory. When the railway is opened, the Americans in the East will continue to transport goods along the railway through the Western Railway to the western coastal areas and sell them to the Western Pacific countries. At the same time, they will kill the Indians in order to achieve complete control over the entire United States. No way, there is such a purpose. Lincoln usually looks like a good man, but I didn't expect that he is so insidious behind the scenes. What's the big deal? When the Dutch first landed in New York, they used the blood and flesh of Indians to expand. It was just that it was snatched away by the British in the end, just like the Cape of Good Hope. Suddenly, speaking of this, everyone looked at William IV. After William IV took a deep breath, he said seriously, "In order to take over Australia, I started planning a few years ago. I built a huge naval base on Paradise Island and concealed it from the whole of Europe and even the Netherlands. Only a few people knew about it, but they were only trustworthy people. The arsenals in Jakarta and Sulawesi are comparable to those in the Netherlands. Now that Australia has been successfully taken, the only thing left for Britain in the South Pacific is New Zealand. Your Majesty, New Zealand's geographical location is too important. It blocks our sea route to South America, which is very annoying." Jan Peter revealed his ambition for New Zealand. "The time has not come yet. New Zealand will be ours sooner or later. The existence of New Zealand now is the reason why Queen Victoria and the British government are confident in us. If it is gone, then the Indian subcontinent will put pressure on us." Chapter 134 Rama IV. At this point, William IV could not help but sigh that the balance of power diplomacy really penetrated the souls of the leaders of British diplomacy in all eras. It turns out that it has existed since ancient times. There is a reason why the Indian subcontinent was divided into India and India in later generations. This was a foreshadowing set by Britain before leaving in order to make a comeback. Although it did not succeed in returning there again, the various pits left behind made the subcontinent riddled with holes. Even in the 21st century, there are constant wars, and the races within India are actually high and low, noble and humble. This kind of solidified legacy deliberately left by Britain has harmed India. This is a huge balance of power diplomacy. Of course, it is not just there. In the countries in the Middle East, the disputes among various factions are also traps set by Britain when it first ruled. If you want to get rid of them, it depends on how they crack them. Having seen a lot of various plots set by Britain around the world, William IV never thought that Queen Victoria was right to be called the European grandmother used by later generations to improve her image, because the various documents and treaties she signed made her controversial. If the signing pen in her hand is a butcher's knife, then the souls that have passed through her pen must be no less than tens of millions. With a stroke of the pen, millions of people fell to the ground. Is there any other woman in the world who can do this? Even Wu Zetian, who was familiar to William IV, could hardly compare with Queen Victoria in terms of influence. New Zealand aside, there are more mountains and less plains there. I think the number of immigrants to the UK will not only not increase, but even decrease. Don't forget that after exchanging the Transvaal Republic and the Orange Free State Republic with the UK has completely mastered South Africa. After this painful lesson, Your Majesty and colleagues, I think Queen Victoria and the British government will put immigration on the agenda. After the war, the people of the British Isles have a safe and worry-free life, and they don't have that desire for the time being. The 400,000 British people who migrated from Australia to New Zealand are the best target immigrants, Venus analyzed. William IV nodded and said, yes, so in the past few years, Britain should develop mining in South Africa to increase local resources, just like us. This is the main purpose. We must seize this strategic opportunity to develop ourselves. In this stable period of opportunity, it is most important to quickly gain a foothold in Australia and establish a stable rule. It is said that the Pacific Railway built by the United States will take 7 years to build, and will employ labor from poor countries around the world. Your Majesty, if we want to save power costs, we must also recruit external labor. Tom asked. He had to ask, because before following William IV here this time, he had been told that he would form a deputy cabinet for the Far East with a former Governor-General of the Dutch East Indies, Jan Semskirk, Army Chief of Staff Jopil, Minister of Industry Wim Coate, Deputy Minister of the Navy Theo Lynn Linden, and Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs Venus. This is a team that William IV wants to form personally, and the purpose is to continue to serve as a symbol of the continued existence of the Kingdom of the Netherlands when anything unexpected happens in the Far East in Europe. No, why should we hire those people? Why not recruit from the East Indies? After all, there is a large population there. Also, we can hire Burmese and Siamese, later called Thais, but we must pay attention to the population balance and let them check and balance each other, so that no one dominates, said William IV with a sharp eye. Burmese. Wim Coate asked puzzledly. After the First Anglo-Burmese War in 1826 and the Second Anglo-Burmese War in 1852, Burma was forcibly divided into Upper Burma and Lower Burma. Should we recruit Upper Burma ruled by the Konbaung dynasty or Lower Burma occupied by the British? William IV did not answer, but asked Benkei Shan, how is Anna now in the Siamese royal family, later Thailand, now also including Laos and Cambodia? She has a good relationship with Rama IV and is now the tutor of more than a dozen princes and princesses of Rama IV. Some time ago, she and Rama IV went from conflict to reconciliation, and then developed a good impression of each other. The two are now in a super friendly relationship, and are also called the second queen by the Siamese people. She now has a huge influence in the Siamese Empire. With the introduction of Benkei Shan, the director of the Netherlands International Intelligence Agency, the people present knew that William IV had such a deep layout. He actually infiltrated Siam, a medium-sized country in the Far East that is also well known in Europe. It turns out that since 1858, Anna, a widow of the Dutch East India, who was affiliated with the Dutch International Intelligence Agency, came to Siam, because at that time Siam began to learn from the West to develop its economy and military. Therefore, Anna's beautiful face and knowledge made her famous in Bangkok quickly, and finally alarmed the Bangkok royal family, so she was interviewed by Rama IV at the time and hired as a tutor of Western culture for the royal family. During this period, because of different ideas, especially Anna secretly instilled the warm charm of the Netherlands, which was contrary to the culture of the great powers of Britain and France that Rama IV wanted his children to learn, so there was a dispute, but in the end he was persuaded by Anna. From conflict to reconciliation, the two actually had a love affair with an age gap of nearly 20 years. And Rama IV learned about the essence and connotation of modern civilization of Western culture through Anna, and at the same time developed a good impression of the Netherlands. Therefore, in many recent large-scale transactions, Rama IV prefers to trade with the Dutch East Indies. After nearly 4 years of development, the economy between the two places has become a close economic and personnel relationship. The founding king of the Bangkok dynasty of the Kingdom of Siam was King Chakri, known as Rama I, who ruled Siam for a total of 27 years from 1782 to 1809. His first move after ascending the throne was to move the capital of the royal family from Thonburi, the Thonburi dynasty that had just disappeared, to Bangkok on the other side of the river, which was also called the Bangkok dynasty, and established a brand new Bangkok dynasty palace. After Rama I died in 1809, his son Rama II continued to make the construction of Bangkok his most important work during the 15 years from 1809 to 1824, when he ruled the country. After King Rama II completed the construction of Bangkok from 1824 to 1851, he found that the huge neighbor in the north had begun to decline and was frequently challenged by Western powers. In the 17th century, the Kingdom of Siam was invaded by Portugal, the Netherlands, Britain, and France in the west, so he knew the power of these Western countries' firearms. Therefore, in order to develop the Kingdom of Siam, he began to contact Western civilization again, established contacts with various countries, and sent missions or representative offices to various countries in order to learn Western culture. In fact, Siam was the first country in the East that wanted to learn Western culture and technology, but unfortunately, its effect and strength were far inferior to that of the latecomer Japan. Chapter 135 Anna and the King. Kingdom of Siam, capital of Bangkok. Rama IV has been having a headache recently. Why? Because the British have recently started to urge him to open up free trade between the two countries, and said that the Kingdom of Siam cannot just be friendly to the Netherlands. Following Britain, there is also the French Empire, which is also a tough guy. In particular, The French invasion of South Vietnam and the British invasion of Lower Burma have caused the Kingdom of Siam to have a huge sense of crisis. Since his father Rama II died on April 2, 1851, he officially announced his ascension to the throne in the Amma Golden Throne Hall of the Grand Palace in Bangkok on April 6 of that year and became Rama IV. He originally wanted to report the death to the suzerain Qing dynasty, but unfortunately, when he went to the Qing dynasty in the north, the Qing dynasty's Emperor Daoguang also died. The special envoy returned to the Kingdom of Siam along the same route, and finally he, the King of Siam, was somewhat unjustified. Unwilling to give up, he sent people to the Qing dynasty again in 1853 to pay tribute, but the Taiping Rebellion broke out again and he returned empty-handed again. In a rage, Rama IV issued an edict to stop paying tribute to the Qing dynasty. From then on, the Kingdom of Siam and its northern neighbor officially severed their vassal relationship. In order to resist the pressure from its northern neighbor, he was delighted by an opportunity in 1855, because Queen Victoria of the British Empire actually sent an envoy, Sir John Bowring, the British Governor-General in the Far East, to Bangkok to pay tribute to him with a diamond-studded pocket watch and stationery bag, etc. He was worried that he had no chance to resist the Qing dynasty, so he took the opportunity to pretend to be reluctant and agreed to the British request and signed the Siam Treaty. The two countries officially established diplomatic relations and sent envoys to each other's countries. To his surprise, Napoleon III of the French Empire also sent Charles Nicolle to bring bronze statues of the King and Queen, as well as new carriages and other gifts to him. So in September of that year, the Siamese-French Treaty was signed with the French Empire, and the two countries officially established diplomatic relations. In the same year, the United States was not to be outdone. The U.S. President Franklin Pierce appointed the consul to Japan, Townsend Harris, to visit Siam and signed the U.S.-Siamese Treaty of Amity and Commerce with Siam. In the following year, in 1856, the U.S. consulate in Bangkok was established, and Stephen Manton became the first U.S. consul to Siam. In 1857, Rama IV sent a special envoy to London to meet with Queen Victoria of the United Kingdom. This was the first time that a Siamese envoy appeared in Europe. In April 1858, Rama IV signed a treaty to establish diplomatic relations with Denmark, and the Kingdom of Denmark minted coins for it. In October 1858, Rama IV signed the Treaty of Friendship and Commerce between Siam and the Netherlands, which was related to the establishment of diplomatic relations with the Netherlands and trade, and finally opened the Siamese market for the Netherlands. In November of the same year, Rama IV hired Anna, a well-known female scholar living in Bangkok, as a royal tutor to teach the Dutch language and other modern scientific knowledge to the princes and princesses and some children of the nobility in the palace. In 1859, Rama IV signed a treaty of friendship and establishment of diplomatic relations with Portugal. In March 1860, he sent a special envoy to Paris to meet with Napoleon III. In October of the same year, Rama IV sent a special envoy to bring gifts to U.S. President Lincoln in order to establish friendly diplomatic relations with the United States. In 1862, Rama IV signed a treaty of friendship and construction with Prussia. Can the Netherlands be trusted? Rama IV originally rejected it directly, but looking at Anna in front of him, he loosened up. The Netherlands is not strong, but your Majesty, the technology of the Netherlands is not weaker than that of other powers. On the contrary, the powers may not want other countries to be advanced, so they will lock up the technology and not pass it on. However, the Netherlands is relatively lax in this regard. This is the biggest benefit for Siam, which is eager to introduce technology. The two countries are simply the best partners for complementarity. Rama IV did not comment, but frowned and asked, "Just now I heard you say that King William IV of the Netherlands is coming to the Far East." "Yes, to be precise, the Dutch East Indies and Dutch Australia. Anna is really beautiful. Even though she is almost 40 years old now, this not only does not reduce her beauty, but adds a bit of plumpness of a young woman. The tall European figure and fair skin, all these combined with Anna, make the 58-year-old Rama IV not feel old, but feel very young. It is said that this time is mainly to inspect Australia. Rama IV swallowed the saliva in his throat fiercely. Australia is too big. It is several times larger than the Kingdom of Siam. It belonged to Queen Victoria of England some time ago, but now it has become the property of William IV of the Netherlands in a short time. He was dazzled. Why do you Europeans pay so little attention to territory? Rama IV asked Anna in confusion. The transactions were too frequent. As Anna told him about the Netherlands, he naturally knew about many recent events in the Netherlands. The Dutch people in South Africa actually beat the British back step by step, and established a point of occupation in Tanzania on the west coast of the Indian Ocean. The territory on the African continent to the west of the Atlantic Ocean is all theirs. In addition, the icy Alaska, which seems to be close to the United States, and the Dutch East Indies, the territory is more than 10 times that of the Kingdom of Siam. All these happened in less than a year, which made him overwhelmed. He was really shocked by the practice of Europe despising territory and exchanging it at any time. Can the Kingdom of Siam learn from the Netherlands and get a good piece of territory? It's not that we don't value it, but the exchanged items are just what the other party wants. But, in our view, sacred territories cannot be exchanged. Your Majesty, don't forget that these territories are not actually our home territories. They are newly developed overseas and colonies seized by various countries. What's wrong with using them to exchange for the territories you want? Rama IV passively accepted this not-so-right statement for a while. His eyes flickered as he asked, does the Netherlands want to support the Konbaung dynasty of Burma? Yes, it is said that Upper Burma requested the Dutch East Indies to sell a batch of arms to the Konbaung government of Upper Burma. Therefore, the Netherlands wants to enter Upper Burma through Siam. But what will happen if Britain knows about it, Anna? Do you think I should do it? Rama IV said, after all, William IV of the Netherlands has just ascended the throne. He doesn't understand that we have entered into a stable diplomatic relationship with Britain. The situation in Upper Burma is critical, mainly because there are many ethnic groups and they are not united, which has caused Burma to retreat. If we help the Netherlands transport arms and the British suffer heavy losses in the forest, Britain will probably bear a grudge against anyone who supports them. Anna was very familiar with Rama IV, so she retreated to advance, making the suspicious man in front of her have some concerns. Your Majesty, have you forgotten that the Netherlands actually has no interests in Myanmar? I suspect they have other purposes. What purpose? Your Majesty, have you forgotten that the Netherlands is currently located in Sumatra Island, the closest to us? I suspect that the Netherlands is building a trade corridor between Siam and Myanmar, and wants to occupy Myanmar's trade market. Your Majesty, the Netherlands is in its development period, and economic development is still the top priority. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 136, Madagascar's King and Minister in Trouble. 1862, the Dutch fleet finally arrived at the port of Pointe-Noire in the north of the Congo River, a new overseas territory of the Netherlands. There, William IV met the 1,000 Dutch soldiers stationed there. Seeing that each of them was in high spirits, William IV gave them an encouraging speech and promised to increase everyone's salary and benefits, which attracted cheers from everyone present. So on the land of Pointe-Noire, the Dutch national anthem Ode to William was sung mutely. After half a day of correction, the fleet continued to move south and arrived at the port of Cabinda at the mouth of the Congo River. After meeting the newly promoted Dutch Major General Braga, he went upstream with him and arrived at Kinshasa, the new city of Congo. After a day of repair, he began to go upstream along the Congo River. After one day, he arrived at Mbandaka, the original capital of the Kingdom of Congo, and directly entered the original Congo Royal Palace. There, a grand welcome ceremony was held that day, and he formally received the original King Antonio X of Congo. Next to him was Martinus, the former leader of the Transvaal Republic and the current deputy minister of the Dutch army. With everyone's envy, William IV officially announced that he would grant the two of them the title of Dutch Baron, and Major General Braga also received the title of Dutch Knight. And several people also swore with gratitude that they would always be loyal to William IV and the Dutch royal family. During the 2 days of rest, William IV and the small cabinet held several secret meetings with the three people in Mbandaka. At these meetings, William IV affirmed the stability of the situation in Congo, and at the same time praised Baron Martinus for grasping the situation, taking northern Rhodesia for the Netherlands according to the original plan, and taking the northern part of southern Rhodesia, and occupying the entire upper reaches of the Zambezi River for the Netherlands. However, William IV asked the three to open up the land route with eastern Kenya and Tanzania as soon as possible to raise the connection between the three places to a new level. At the same time, the three of them also received new instructions from William IV, requiring them to judge the situation and cooperate with each other. If necessary, they can act first and report later, and erode the colonies of Angola in the south and the King of Ordinary Aya in the southeast. However, the current focus is on developing economic resources. Provide a steady stream of nutrients for the mainland and Australia. In addition to holding secret meetings, William IV also watched the military parade and carried out military exercises, requiring the Transvaal Army to form teams to compete with each other, and to form mixed teams for exercises. In the past few days, the Dutch Native Army, the Congolese natives, and the Transvaal Army have grown rapidly. This army of 50,000 people has quickly merged. After 7 days, they have completely become one. William IV set off again along the Congo River to the estuary and continued to go south. It was already September 29. However, this fleet has about 3,000 more soldiers than when it came. They are all Transvaal soldiers who have fought passionately with the British. They can be said to be brave and good at fighting. After passing through Portuguese Angola, Prussian Southwest Africa, later Namibia, and South Africa, which is now completely occupied by Britain, it took them 7 days to finally land in the port town of Toliara in the southwest of Madagascar on October 6. There, William IV met a long-lost Dutch chief of staff Leon Buck. The white face before has turned black. The heat in Africa is too strong. General Buck, who is known as the cunning fox of the two companies of the Dutch army, dares to tease him. How everyone laughed knowingly. However, there were two people who couldn't laugh when they saw this scene. They were Madagascar's commander-in-chief and foreign minister Rainilia Rivoni and former King Redama II. Rainilia Rivoni was born in a new noble family in Antananarivo. His ancestors were freemen from the west. Later, they joined the royal family and made a fortune through business and military industry. His ancestor helped Renbozirim ascend the throne of the Kingdom of Imerina, the dynasty in Madagascar, so he became the king's secretary. Rainilia Rivoni's father and elder brother recognized the prime minister of the Imerina dynasty of the Kingdom of Madagascar. Rainilia Rivoni was talented and eloquent since he was young, and he won the appreciation of the elderly Queen Ranavalona I in the royal palace of Madagascar. In 1852, he became one of the most important figures in the royal palace as the Queen's private secretary and senior general. In 1860, when the current King Redama II came to power, he was promoted to foreign minister. However, since the 1950s, various anti-social contradictions in Madagascar have become increasingly intensified. The contradictions between the new aristocratic forces, which almost hold all the important positions in the dynasty and represent the interests of the emerging aristocracy and landlords, and the old aristocracy represented by the royal family have intensified and surfaced. The vast number of farmers, handicraftsmen, small commodity people, and ordinary soldiers have been fighting against feudal exploitation, labor, and the king's tyranny. In May 1861, a popular uprising finally broke out in the capital Antananarivo. On May 12, the new nobles led by the Rainilia Rivoni brothers launched a political rebellion against the royal family. With the help of the people, they overthrew the rule of Radama II and helped Queen Rabodo to the throne of the queen. Rainilia Rivoni was appointed commander-in-chief and his brother was appointed prime minister. From then on, the monarchy gave way to the prime minister's autocracy. In January 1862, because he was dissatisfied with the checks and balances of power by his brother, Rainilia Rivoni encouraged the queen to join him in forming a force against his brother's autocracy as prime minister. So his brother, the prime minister, was dismissed and Rainilia Rivoni successfully took over as prime minister of the Kingdom of Madagascar. After that, he finally appeased Britain and France and made them give up the invasion of Madagascar. He had just gained power and was watching Britain being beaten by the Transvaal Republic and the Zulu Kingdom in South Africa. He was particularly sarcastic and mocking at Britain when he saw Britain being beaten back step by step. However, he did not expect that France, Prussia and the Netherlands, like bandits, would unite to directly grab territory on the African continent. This news not only shocked Europe, but he was also shocked in Madagascar. He and the Queen secretly prayed that the three countries would not take offense to Madagascar, but he underestimated Madagascar. The Netherlands actually chose Madagascar. After these years of civil unrest, the Kingdom of Madagascar, with a population of only 300,000, had less than 10,000 troops left. In front of the bullet-filled Dutch army, they had originally thought of fighting, but they did not expect that the former King Radama II would escape from prison and lead an army loyal to him. However, they did not want to fight, but wanted to rely on the army of the Kingdom of the Netherlands to regain power. In the end, the Netherlands took over the entire island of Madagascar except the capital Antananarivo in less than a month under the guidance of the former king, the biggest god of Madagascar. He originally wanted to wait for British rescuers, because he had sent a letter of help to the British Governor-General of South Africa, Jobbin, but what he and the Queen did not expect was that the British chose to stay put and ignore his and the Queen's letters of help after the Transvaal Republic was automatically dissolved and the Zulu Kingdom was eliminated. This forced him, the Prime Minister, to give up resistance and choose to surrender. Seeing the King of the Netherlands, William IV, with his laughter, made him and Radama II feel bitter. The two had been fighting for power in Madagascar for many years. With a successful invasion of the Dutch palace, they became captives. Everything in the past seemed so ridiculous. You two are the most familiar with the things on the island of Madagascar. God has a good heart. Since you two have chosen to surrender to the Netherlands, you need to be loyal. What do you think? Radama II said without waiting for Rainelia to speak. Your Majesty, you are right. I, Radama, am absolutely loyal to the Netherlands. I can even swear to this to show my respect for your Majesty, just like the Betsibuka River, which is endless and continuous. Damn it, William IV got goosebumps immediately. Rainelia and other natives looked at Radama in amazement, as if they were meeting this man as a king for the first time. When did this former king become so eloquent? He seemed to be even more powerful than Rainelia, who was known as an eloquent speaker. After Leon Booker whispered a few words in William IV's ear, William IV coughed a few times before saying, "Since you two are willing to be loyal to the Netherlands, I will not treat you badly. Let's do this. I plan to build railways throughout Australia. This is Tom, the Deputy Minister of Finance of the Netherlands, and Wim Cotter, the Minister of Industry. The loyalty you two want to show will be tested by these two. You each choose a team of 10,000 people and go to the north and south of Australia to help build a railway. I'll put it here. If either of you can complete the task first, I will grant the other the title of Dutch Knight, and the loser will continue to serve there for more than 10 years. This time, I will set the mission period to 5 years." Radama II was originally proud of himself for being the first to express his position, but now he is dumbfounded. Building railways, he, the King of Madagascar, is actually going to help the Netherlands build railways? Is William IV wasting my talent? Also, 5 years to get a small knighthood? Isn't that too stingy? Rainelia was different when he heard this. He was a cautious person, otherwise he would not have become the Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Madagascar step by step from a noble son in less than 10 years, and he did it by overthrowing the former King Radama II. Many people suspected that he had an affair with the Queen at the time, but in fact only he knew that he was innocent, but he was just a little more threatening to the Queen. Chapter 137 Australia, here I come. 5 years of railway life have allowed me to enter the wider world of European countries and join the powerful Kingdom of the Netherlands. In order to broaden my horizons and no longer limit myself to the island of Madagascar, Your Majesty, I, Rainelia, have secured this admission ticket. He looked at Radama II provocatively and said, "I've secured this knighthood." Rainelia is good at specializing, but he is indeed very talented. In comparison, Radama II has great ambitions, but he is too far-sighted and is not worth worrying about. William IV smiled and said, "Putting the two of them in Australia is a good idea. Using such specialized talents to build a railway that is destined to be stained with blood, many people in Madagascar will not think that it was me and the Dutch government who did it, but that they, Rainelia and Radama II, were the bad guys. Isn't this more perfect?" Hearing this, Chief of Staff Booker and others were all excited. They had been thinking about how to control the other side, but they didn't expect that His Majesty William IV had already thought of the scapegoat for the future infamy. His Majesty's vision was indeed long-term. Therefore, everyone looked at William IV with a sincere and convinced look. With the establishment of the Dutch status of Madagascar and the participation of the Dutch fleet, Madagascar Island soon became impregnable. Now in the Army of Madagascar, in addition to the 5,000 Navy and 10,000 Dutch native army and 3,000 Transvaal troops brought by William IV, there are 5,000 Madagascar troops. Originally, Leon Bouker had more than 5,000 Dutch native army troops and 2,000 navy troops here. Therefore, together, there are more than 23,000 army troops and 7,000 navy troops. Such an army is second only to Britain and France in the north in Africa. However, Madagascar is located in a key area, and the importance of the waterway is not weak, so William IV decided to leave 10,000 Dutch native troops and the original 2,000 navy, and also draw 10,000 native troops from the East Indies to form a 20,000 army to garrison Madagascar. William IV decided to deploy 3,000 people in each of the southwest center Toliara, the southern inland center Fianarantsoa, the central east center Toamasina, the northern center Antsiranana, and the northwest Mahajanga, for a total of 15,000 people, and Antananarivo, the capital of Madagascar province, deployed 5,000 people as a response. The main naval ports are deployed at the port of Mahajanga at the mouth of the Betsibuka River, and the port of Toamasina in the east, which guards the capital Antananarivo. Politically, this time it was shown that there was a general manager of Booker, but the Queen was unexpectedly appointed as an advisor by William IV. Many people don't understand what this means, but William IV did not explain it. After sorting out the Madagascar affairs, it was already October 20th, and half a month had passed. Originally, he wanted to go north to Tanzania and Kenya first, but the time would coincide with his engagement, so William IV chose to go directly east to Australia, and it would not be too late to go back. After sailing east from Toamasina, he finally arrived in Perth, Western Australia province in the west of Australia after a week, and landed on October 28, the continent that would belong to the rise of the Dutch from now on. Due to the withdrawal of the British, the indigenous population in the south was also less, so although Perth was the capital of a province, its population was less than 50,000. Here he met Ajax, the mayor of Perth, Western Australia. After some understanding, he realized that most of the current immigrants disliked the poor land in Western Australia and it was not easy to farm. Therefore, the entire Western Australia province, excluding the indigenous people, had a population of less than 150,000, of which Perth accounted for more than 50,000. The population of the Netherlands is now beginning to migrate to the Far East. This is a national policy and will not change. However, as you all know, the base of the native population of the Netherlands is not too large. Therefore, encouraging childbirth is what you need to work on. I ask you to encourage each family to have more than 4 children, to achieve the goal of doubling the number in 20 years. Economic development is mainly aimed at the mining industry. I have asked the Ministry of Industry and the Netherlands Ministry of Resources, which is about to be established, to conduct mineral exploration in Western Australia. As long as minerals are discovered, the economy of Western Australia will soar, and at that time, the population will surge in. You know, South Africa is like that now. The population has increased by an astonishing 10% in a short period of time, just in 3 months. Therefore, Western Australia also needs such a wave of population migration, but the premise is that you must implement a good population control policy and not make a mess, which will show the leakage of government management. Also, the indigenous population can be used. They are also a kind of labor force. We need to let them slowly integrate into the life of the Netherlands and Australia. In this way, we will have no worries. In this regard, the Ministry of Education promotes various universities to build branches in the Far East for the purpose of educating these indigenous people, in order to increase their loyalty to the Netherlands. With the upper-level universities, the lower primary education must also keep up. Education Minister Ruud Bells kept nodding to show that he understood. Ajax, the mayor of Perth, Western Australia, agreed with what William IV said and said that he would fully cooperate with the assimilation policy of the Ministry of Education. Western Australia is now desolate everywhere. Although the scenery is unique, William IV is not on the mood, because it can only prove that the Netherlands needs to increase its efforts to develop here. The people who accompanied him quickly recorded what they saw and heard along the way, including the model of developing the Western Australian province mentioned by His Majesty just now. In particular, Industry Minister Codd and Deputy Minister of Finance Tom were even more impressed. If this place really becomes a mineral deposit, it is indeed a good place. After all, the coastline here is too long, which will have an obvious advantage in transporting minerals and save a lot of fuel waste in shipping. On October 31, 1862, in Northam, a small inland village east of Perth, Western Australia, There was a provincial military camp of the Dutch government here, with 5,000 Dutch soldiers stationed. At the Northam Weapons Test Site, after reviewing the soldiers' training, William IV picked up a rifle in his hand, while the director of the Netherlands International Intelligence Agency, Mackay Sean, the Minister of Industry, Wim Coat, the Minister of Education, Ruud Bels, the Chief Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, Venus, the Chief of Army Staff, Jopil, and the senior officials of Western Australia, Feyenoord, and the Mayor of Perth, Ajax, were all commenting on it. The caliber is 7.92 mm, and the bullet is automatically loaded. If other European countries knew about this, they would definitely be jealous and hateful. Your Majesty's design is to make the Kingdom of the Netherlands hate you. The Chief of the Army General Staff, Jopil, picked up the Mauser semi-automatic rifle, fired one shot, and the second shot followed. The distant center was pierced with 2 holes, but the distance difference was less than 2 centimeters. He was a sharpshooter. This made William IV's hands tremble twice. Just now, he was still very happy that he had shot a bullet in the center, but the other bullet was a little off. But now, William IV paused, aimed, shot, and pierced the center. Hit again. William IV took it easy and gave the gun to someone else. He said to Jopil in a stingy way, "It seems that the Army's weapons are too advanced, and the Army will stop updating new weapons in terms of military expenditure in the future, and the Navy will be given priority." Hearing this, Il showed bitterness. Seeing this, everyone laughed. William IV also laughed, and then said, "This semi-automatic rifle is only the first step, and there is still work to be done on the development of automatic rifles." Tom said, "The Mauser rifle is 3 to 5 years more advanced than their matchlock rifles. Although it is now reported that some countries are imitating our Mauser rifles, there is still a big gap compared to the Mauser rifles. In comparison, when they were imitating the Mauser rifles, they never thought that we would actually manufacture and mass-produce them. This is at least a semi-automatic rifle that is more than 10 years more advanced than the existing firearms of other countries." However, Deputy Foreign Minister Venus frowned and said worriedly, "Your Majesty, this semi-automatic rifle is more than 10 years more advanced than others. If we are too prominent, will it cause collective attacks from other countries? I think we should slow down the production speed to avoid leaking bad news." William IV smiled and said, "When I designed this gun, I also thought so. I just thought it was fun at the time. I didn't expect that the weapons factory under the William Group would actually produce it. It seems that the William Group has developed rapidly in recent years." Education Minister Ruud Bels smiled and said, "Your Majesty, the William Group has become a towering enterprise in the Netherlands. Now the first choice of many Dutch university graduates, in addition to entering government departments. Other options, the first one is family business and inheriting family jobs, the third is to join the William Group. Now there is a legend in the education community, that is, learn technology in William. The William Group has become the company that absorbs the most talents in the Netherlands. Among the 50,000 graduates from Dutch universities each year, more than 10,000 enter the William Group." William IV nodded and warned, "But be careful that the William Group monopolizes the market. If so, it will be difficult for other Dutch companies to grow and develop," he said to Industry Minister Cotte. The latter nodded knowingly. Deputy Chief of Staff Il said, "Your Majesty, the production of this kind of advanced weapons, in order to avoid leakage, the gun factories are too dense on Paradise Island. Although it is convenient to gather all the factories together, it is easy to be discovered, and it is not hidden there. After all, if the navy of other countries attacks from the sea in the Gulf of Irian, they will reach those arms-gathering places as soon as they land. Therefore, the navy can be retained, but the army and gun factories cannot be located there, and it is also easy to leak naval secrets. After all, with the increase in population, Paradise Island is no longer secretive, but it's a pity that there are not many supporting conditions there. Sulawesi Island has a large population, but it is too close to Kalimantan Island, which is not very safe and not under our control." When others heard this, they agreed that Paradise Island was indeed not suitable as an arsenal. Seeing this, William IV laughed and said, "You have forgotten the most suitable place." When William IV said this, the others were confused at first, and then suddenly woke up, their eyes lit up, and they shouted in unison, "Adelaide." Chapter 138, 7 former prime ministers were demoted and hired? In fact, if Adelaide is only the deputy capital of Australia, it is actually the most suitable, because of its geographical location. When the East-West Railway is built, it will become the East-West Transportation Center. Because the Victoria Desert, Gibson Desert, and Great Sandy Desert stand from south to north in the west, and there is the Simpson Desert in the east. Therefore, the most convenient passage to the north of Australia is the area between the deserts on both sides. The northern part of Adelaide, which is located in the southern center, is just in the southern coastal center between the two deserts. From here, through Lee Creek, Mary, Nirpina, Udmadatta, and Pedka, this is already the northernmost tip of South Australia. Crossing over is the MacDonnell Ranges in the Northern Australia province, and you will reach Alice Springs, the central hub of Central Australia. After arriving here, continue north to the Darwin route. To the east is the Central and Northern Queensland province, and to the west is the northern part of Western Australia province. Therefore, Alice Springs is also known as the most central city in Australia. Therefore, this is also the shortest route to Darwin in the north. This railway also became the most important strategic railway in William Ivy's plan, in addition to the three economic railways in the south, namely the East-West Railway and the East-West Railway. Because of this route, from Adelaide to Darwin in the north, and from Darwin through the Timor Sea in the west, it is the most equidistant route to the east and west of East India. Whether it is Australia supporting East India in case of trouble in East India, or South Australia supporting East India in case of trouble in South Australia, it will be the most convenient, time-consuming and safest route. Therefore, the completion of this railway is definitely the most important key measure for the Netherlands to move south from East India, which has been firmly controlled, to Australia. With it, the Netherlands will definitely save more than 10 years to truly rule Australia. With it, Australia is divided into east and west halves, and it can also go deep into the core inland part. As long as the Dutch population base is sufficient, they can slowly migrate along the way and turn small villages into small towns and cities. Even in William Ivy's plan, Alice Springs will be built into a central city in the central region, where airships and airplanes that will appear in the future can settle down and become an aerospace industrial base. Adelaide in South Australia mainly has manufacturing, military manufacturing and R&D centers, as well as the automobile industry center that will appear in the future. It is also the largest naval construction base in Australia. In the future, it will exceed the naval base of Paradise Island in terms of scale. Perth in Western Australia is the national centre of mining, alchemy, material research and development, metal processing and other industries. Darwin in Northern Australia is mining, oil and gas industry, refining industry, as well as regional commercial centre, naval construction industry and cargo ship construction industry. Brisbane in Queensland is mainly built around industry and commerce, education industry, light industry, and food processing industry centre relying on huge food planting. Sydney in New South Wales has become a trade, finance, education centre and national commercial centre. Melbourne, the deputy capital of William Province, will be built into the largest urban centre in the country, with heavy machinery, textiles, papermaking, chemicals and metal processing industries, and other industries that will appear in the future, such as automobiles, textiles and food industries. Stock exchange, financial centre, high-tech research and development centre. Hobart, Tasmania in the south, consists of metal forging, steel casting, papermaking, textile fertilizer, wood and meat processing, fruit processing, etc. At the same time, it will also be one of Australia's commercial shipyards. When he first arrived in Melbourne, William Ivy stayed in the former British Governor's House, now the temporary Dutch Royal Palace. Here, he met the Deputy Minister of the Navy, Theo van Linden, who is in charge of the Far East Navy, and the Governor-General Jan Simskirk. With the arrival of these two people, William Ivy is now surrounded by the Director of International Intelligence Mackay Sean, Minister of Industry Wim Coate, Minister of Education Ruud Bells, Chief Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs Venus, Deputy Minister of Finance Tom, Minister of the Navy Jan Peter, Deputy Minister of the Navy Theo van Linden, Army Chief of Staff Job Hill, Governor-General of East India Jan Simskirk. Almost all the functional departments of the Netherlands are included. However, several people appeared in the middle of the journey, which surprised everyone, because the people who appeared were all former Prime Ministers of the Netherlands. The former Prime Minister of the Netherlands, the Liberal Gerrit Simopanek, who served for only 3 months from March to May 1848. Jacob de, who served for 1 year from November 1848 to November 1849. Chancellor Van Hall, who served from April 1853 to July 1856, second term from February 1860 to March 1861. Justin van der Bruggen, who served from July 1856 to March 1858. Jacob van Lauwesen, who served from March 1861 to November 1861. Jan Jacob Brockhuizen, who served from February 1858 to March 1862. Schurter von Heemstra, November 1861 February 1862, except for the current Prime Minister Johan Rudolf Torby. All the prime ministers appointed in the Netherlands in 1848 have gathered here. These were all the former celebrities of the Netherlands. Therefore, even the senior officials of the Dutch government who hold great power now have chosen to keep a low profile. After all, many of them have been promoted by these former prime ministers. Among these former prime ministers, except for Bruggen who is a Christian, the others are liberals. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't need to introduce these. Everyone is familiar with them. This is our former Prime Minister of the Netherlands. After William IV and others sat down, the gentleman was brief and introduced them. After that, he also introduced the new team of the Privy Council to several prime ministers. The old prime ministers have all worked hard for the Netherlands, and I shouldn't bother you anymore. However, the Netherlands is now entering a critical period of development, especially in the Far East where all industries are waiting to be developed. Why not fight for it? If the Netherlands wants to further rise in its international status, it must clench its fists and not waste a single bit of strength. Only then can the Netherlands revive and reproduce the glory of the world's coachman, and even participate in the world hegemony. The Netherlands does not have much time to let others wait for us and develop slowly. On the contrary, we should far surpass other countries in terms of development speed. William IV pointed at the Director of International Intelligence Mackay Sean, Minister of Industry Wim Coat, Minister of Education Rudd Bells, Chief Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs Venus, Deputy Minister of Finance Tom, Minister of the Navy Jan Petterway, Deputy Minister of the Navy Theo von Linden, Army Chief of Staff Job Ill, and Governor General of the East India Jan Simcock. He said to the former prime ministers, "These are the people I deployed in the Far East, and they are also the members of the Privy Council we are in now." William IV looked at the people again, pointed at the prime ministers and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, these are the candidates for an Australian senior officials that I have prepared when I was in my home country." Except for the 7 former prime ministers, the others showed surprise. Obviously, they did not expect William IV to make such an arrangement. Except for the current Prime Minister John Rudolph Thorbecke, all the prime ministers who were successfully elected after 1848 are here. The 7 former prime ministers correspond to the 7 provinces of Australia. How can it be so accurate? Is it arranged by God? Chapter 139. The Greek crisis begins. Chancellor Van Hall, who had served as Prime Minister for 2 terms, was directly appointed as a senior official of the province of William. William IV asked him to do a good job in the construction of Melbourne, the deputy capital, and the corresponding industrial layout. He also served as the Deputy Prime Minister and assisted Prime Minister Thorbecke in managing the Far East. William IV asked Chancellor Van Hall to serve as a senior official of the province of Tasmania. Gerrit Samapanik was appointed as a senior official of the province of Western Australia, and currently mining is the main focus. Justin van der Bruggen was appointed as a senior official of the province of Northern Australia. In addition to the economic development direction that had already been arranged, Bruggen was also required to assist missionaries in promoting Protestantism to the indigenous people and enhance the recognition of the Dutch. Jacob de became a senior official of the province of Queensland, fully developing agriculture and ensuring food and food processing industries in the Far East. Jacob van Lewis was appointed as a senior official of the province of New Wales, fully developing the financial industry and manufacturing business. South Australia appointed Schurter von Heemstra to take over and develop the military industry and shipbuilding industry. In order to relieve the pressure on Simcock, William IV appointed Jan Jacob Brockhuizen, who had been Prime Minister for 4 years, to be in charge of New Guinea, the Maluku Islands, the South Pacific Islands, and the Hawaiian Islands. After the appointment was announced, everyone had different expressions, but Simcock was calm. On the contrary, he felt that although this seemed to be a reduction of power, it was actually a kind of trust and protection. The tree that stands out in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. He had not seen so many former prime ministers who could only become high-ranking officials. As a governor, if he managed too large an area, he would be considered to be slapping the other party in the face. Therefore, William IV's approach was very consistent with his approval. Period. Governor Simcock can move more freely in the East Indies after losing New Guinea Island, because we may have to face too many opponents in the north, and the Maluku Islands given to Jane Jacob Brockhausen can better cover the western part of Paradise Island. Chancellor Van Hall, Your Majesty, what do you mean? William IV then explained the reason. It turned out that Kalimantan Island had been divided by us, the Netherlands, Tsarist Russia and Britain. On the southeast peninsula, the sphere of influence was divided into the Kingdom of Siam and Baiu, the French Empire occupying South Vietnam, and Britain occupying Lower Burma and the entire western coast of Burma. The countries on the Southeast Asian peninsula seem to have stopped fighting, but in fact, the undercurrent is surging, and the situation may cause huge waves at any time. This is also the reason why I pulled out the prime ministers. The Australian continent must develop its economy and also develop its military industry, quickly becoming a powerful entity for military technology innovation and manufacturing, forming a complementary relationship with the East Indies and becoming a mutually dependent object. In this way, the safety of the far-reaching Netherlands can be guaranteed. In addition to Southeast Asia, the situation in Africa is not optimistic either. South Australia needs to quickly develop its military industry and industrial chains such as firearms and ammunition. The same is true for the military on the island of New Guinea. In my understanding, economy is not necessarily just civilian economy, there is also military economy. Military economy? This is a new concept. Everyone's eyes lit up. The senior official of South Australia, Chancellor Van Hall, and Jane Jacob Brockhausen of New Guinea, who were envious of others just now, are the two major military manufacturing sites in the Far East. It can be estimated that as more and more wars are fought in various places, the sales of weapons will definitely be hot. Even if there is no war, as long as the situation is tense, who can rest assured if there is no food and weapons at home? Therefore, it is conceivable how huge the profits and employment opportunities here will be. In this regard, both the mainland and New Guinea are ready. South Australia can quickly complete the production by attracting investment, which is more convenient and easier to achieve results than other places, such as Western Australia, to detect and refine minerals. William IV integrated all the data and then got a copy of the data. At present, there are more than 600,000 Dutch in the Dutch East Indies, and the natives were originally nearly 10 million. However, with the trade of East Kalimantan and West Kalimantan to Britain and North Kalimantan to Tsarist Russia, the three places have lost 3 million people, leaving only 7 million natives. Among them, there are 1 million in South Kalimantan, 800,000 in Sumatra, 3 million in Java, 900,000 in Nusa Tenggara, 300,000 in Maluku, and 900,000 in Sulawesi. There are more than 300,000 in New Guinea, and 400,000 natives. With the increase in immigrants in the past few months, the Dutch population in Australia has exceeded 500,000, some of whom are Dutch who went south from the original East India to find opportunities, and some are from New Guinea, and most of them are from the mainland in the past few months. At present, Australia has the most people, reaching 550,000. In addition, there are about 400,000 Australian natives. There are 450,000 Dutch from Transvaal and the Orange Free State in Tanzania. There are more than 1.05 million Dutch in the Far East, plus 400,000 Australian Aborigines, and 7.4 million Aborigines ruled by the Dutch in the Far East, of which the Dutch account for about 14%. As the East Indian Aborigines landed in Tanzania and Kenya, these Dutch in Tanzania will gradually move to Australia in 1 or 2 years, especially Western Australia and the 2 Australian provinces, to make up for the gaps caused by the desolation there, and at the same time reduce the invisible pressure of the excessive population of some Aborigines in East India. If the 450,000 people are added, the speech will exceed 20% of the total population. Moreover, in order to increase the proportion of the Dutch and prevent the Dutch from losing the power to manage the country in the election after the Aborigines have too many people, William has even planned to migrate more than 2 million people from the East Indies to Tanzania, Kenya, and Congo. The migration to Madagascar Island is about 500,000. In this way, the Aborigines in East India will achieve a reduced sense of presence. The population ratio of the Dutch in the Far East will also exceed 30%. With a continuous immigration of the locals, the Aborigines are constantly required to migrate, etc., and the population ratio here will gradually tend to the Dutch. However, these people who migrated to Tanzania will remain loyal to the Netherlands, otherwise the indigenous people may become powerful in Tanzania in the future. In order to prevent the wave of colonial liberation in various places, William IV even scattered these people mainly in northern Rhodesia in the south, later Zambia. Even if the wave came, it would not affect the Netherlands' dominance there. A step further, even if it was affected, it would only be Zambia. The others at least allowed the Netherlands to maintain a huge influence, just like France still maintained its influence on North Africa and West Africa in the 21st century. While William IV was arranging his troops and arranging various important positions in the Far East, many major events related to him happened in Europe. He had to rush back to Europe. It turned out that there was a large-scale strike and boycott in Greece, demanding King Otto to step down from the throne, and oppose the Bavarians to interfere in the country's politics. Chapter 140 The Notorious New Indian Viceroy. In the Indian Ocean, at the dock of Colombo, the capital of Ceylon, Sri Lanka, in the east of the Indian subcontinent, under the strict protection of a group of British soldiers, two British nobles looked at the Dutch fleet carrying the Dutch king and started a conversation. It seems that His Majesty William IV of the Netherlands has gained a lot from this trip to the Far East. Earl Elgin seems very unhappy. Isn't Earl Canning envious too? James Bruce, the new British Governor-General of India, looked at Charles Canning, Earl of Canning, in front of him, and was a little afraid of each other. Earl Canning, you are too modest. You were elected to the House of Commons in 1836, inherited your deceased mother's title of Viscount Canning in 1837, joined Robert Peel's cabinet in 1841, and became Chief Under-Secretary of State at the Foreign Office. In 1846, he was appointed Director of the British Timber and Forestry Bureau. From 1853 to 1855, he served as Postmaster General in the cabinet of the Earl of Aberdeen. In 1856, he was unexpectedly appointed Governor-General of India in the Whig party's Lord Palmerston's government, succeeding the Earl of Dalhousie. And your various actions in India have become the subject of much discussion among the people of London, who claim that you have made the greatest contribution to establishing Britain's hegemony in the Far East and Indian Ocean. Like your father, Prime Minister Canning, you are one of the greatest father-son duos in British politics. As he spoke, James Bruce, Earl Elgin, was a little envious of the other party. As soon as he was appointed as the Governor-General of India in 1856 and took over, he immediately sent an expeditionary force to the Persian Gulf to oppose the Persian Gulf King's occupation of Herat, a British protectorate in Afghanistan. After the expeditionary force drove away the Persian army, it won the friendship of the Afghan ruler. A treaty was signed in 1857 to consolidate relations. In the same year, the Indian Mutiny, the Bengal soldiers were dissatisfied with British rule and developed into a large-scale rebellion against British rule in northern India. Canning quickly adjusted his troops, including intercepting the troops sent to the Far East to fight the Second Opium War and reoccupying the strongholds occupied by the rebels. After the mutiny was quelled, Canning insisted on treating the rebels with caution, fairness, calmness, patience and reason, persuading the Indians to believe in his mother's quadrangle instead of revenge, so that a crisis was quickly resolved peacefully. After London learned a lesson from this, India began to change its management strategy, from the East India Company to direct rule by the Queen of England. Canning presided over the management reorganization of India. After the reorganization was successful, he was promoted from Viscount to Earl in 1859. It can be said that there are three reasons why Earl Elgin was afraid of the other party. The first is his qualifications and ability, the second is the other party's many years of business in India. Now that he has taken over, he is afraid that the other party will be dissatisfied and leave a backup to deliberately mess with him, which will be a problem for him. The third is his father, former Prime Minister Canning, who is one of the greatest prime ministers in the history of British foreign ministers. Let's put it this way, Earl Canning is a conservative Tory, but he is an alternative. Like the Earl of Aberdeen, he is a Tory but does the things of the Whig party. He belongs to the moderates in the Tory party. Therefore, he won the trust of the current Whig Prime Minister Viscount Palmerston and was appointed as the Governor-General of India. The other party's life trajectory is also the reason why he is very afraid. Since becoming an Earl in 1859, he has acted more boldly, accepting Indians as unofficial members, reorganizing the Indian Army, and increasing the proportion of British from 20% to 30%. He also encouraged road construction and famine relief, and founded the University of Calcutta, the University of Madras and the University of Bombay. This laid a platform for the British government to control the Indian elite in the future. James Bruce, Earl of Elgin, had a higher title than the latter 3 years ago, but as the former Governor-General helped Britain gain huge benefits in India, he was generously rewarded by the Queen in 1859 and was promoted from Viscount to Earl, and the two had the same title. Moreover, he was the former Governor-General of India. Maybe he could go further when he returned to London this time? And Earl Canning was also very afraid of Earl Elgin. Earl Elgin is not bad either. If Canning made his fortune in India, then Earl Elgin was the rise of Britain in the Far East Queen affairs. Earl Elgin graduated from Oxford University and became the Governor-General of Jamaica in 1842. He had a high starting point. In 1846, he served as the British Governor-General in North America, Canada, responsible for implementing the arrangements of Lord Darramore and the cabinet members. However, he himself did not get along well with the Tories, especially his support for compensation for the losses of the British in the riots in Lower Canada in 1837, which made the Tories strongly opposed. However, because of this, he gained huge support in Canada and his rule was consolidated. Many people later suspected that this was a double act between the British government and him. In 1854, as the leader of Canada authorized by Britain, he negotiated a reciprocal treaty between the Canadian colonies and the United States. In 1857, he served as the British plenipotentiary representative to the Qing dynasty and led a navy and army to the Far East. In December, he commanded the British and French coalition forces to attack the south of the Qing dynasty. In May of the following year, he led the British and French coalition forces to the north, bombarded Dagukau, and forced the Qing dynasty to sign an unequal treaty. After that, he visited Japan as a representative of the United Kingdom. From 1859 to 1860, he served as the Minister of Posts, and took up this position 3 years later than Earl Canning. However, in order to further pay off the Qing court, London sent Earl Elgin back to the Qing dynasty as an envoy in February 1860. He led the British army and, together with France, took away all the national treasures of the Qing dynasty in the Yuan Mingyan and shared the spoils with France. In the end, some were given to the Queen, some were auctioned, and some were transferred to museums across Europe. He even did not forget to burn the largest museum of the Qing dynasty for 3 days before leaving, turning it into ashes. In the end, he forced the Qing royal family to sign the unequal treaty capital treaty. As a result, Earl Elgin caused great hatred in the Qing dynasty. In order to protect him, the cabinet of Queen Victoria of London and Viscount Palmerston of the Whig Party chose Earl Elgin as the new Governor-General of India in the competition for the candidate of the Governor-General of India after Earl Canning was transferred back to London. The two can be middle-aged in British politics. They were born after 1810. They are in their early 50s this year and have become partners with Disraeli and Claxton. Therefore, in the Far East in India and the Qing dynasty, they are working hard to score points for the two parties in London politics. Of course, personal interests also come first. The Netherlands has developed too fast recently. I originally thought that the Queen would put me in Australia as the Governor-General, but now I have become the Governor-General of India. Earl Elgin smiled bitterly and said, "Earl Canning knows the situation here better than me. The Netherlands took Australia away, which made us, the governors of overseas colonies, have fewer places to choose from." That's right. In terms of gold content in overseas colonies, the Governor-General of Canada, the Governor-General of South Africa at the Cape of Good Hope, the Governor-General of Australia, the Governor-General of India, and the Governor-General of Egypt are the 5 Governors-General with the highest gold content, followed by the Governor-General of New Zealand and the Governor-General of Jamaica. Now that Australia is gone, the road for us overseas colonial officials has suddenly become narrower, sighed Earl Canning. Earl Elgin, I heard that Earl Canning is about to be promoted when he returned to London. Please support the development of India in the future. Earl Canning, of course, let's go. I will hand over to you the attitudes of the states in the Indian affiliated alliance towards London. On the Rotterdam, William IV had a gloomy face. Canning didn't know much about him in his previous life, but he was very familiar with James Bruce, Earl Elgin, because in later generations, he was also called Elgin and was called the leader of the 2 robbers who invaded the Yuan Mingyan. This man has a bad reputation in Europe, and his family is even called a robber family. In 1801, The 7th Earl of Elgin got the Greek Parthenon statue from the Ottoman Turks who ruled Greece and transported it back to Britain, which caused dissatisfaction among the Greeks. The current 8th Earl of Elgin, James Bruce, carried out armed robbery in the old Summer Palace, moved the national treasure of the garden and burned it. This is very rare in the history of world civilization. The great French writer Hugo even wrote in Grief and Anger, "We call ourselves civilized people, and we think that our compatriots are barbarians." This involves the good things that civilized people do to barbarians. Even many British people ridiculed that the title of Earl of Elgin had become a symbol of robbery, and that the disciple was better than the master. They thought that this Earl family, which had always been sanctimonious, was too barbaric. If the first Earl of Elgin, Byron, was alive, he might have made more severe moral criticisms against them, and even expelled the father and son from the family. Your Majesty, I heard just now at the Colombo dock that Earl Elgin expressed his dissatisfaction with our taking over in Australia. Obviously, this man will implement policies that are unfavorable to the Netherlands. As a Whig and now a backbone figure of the party, his influence on the future of our Netherlands may gradually increase, and we must guard against it. Mackay. John followed up, Earl Canning is much more pragmatic, but he belongs to the Tory party. The new leader of the Tory party, Disraeli, is dissatisfied with the current Viscount Palmerston's policy of easing the Netherlands. If the Tories come to power, Britain's current policy towards the Netherlands may be subverted and started over, which is also a very serious matter for the Netherlands. William Ivey agreed with Mackay Shun's concerns. This is why I am in a hurry to take over in Australia. The Netherlands' native territory is small and the depth is too shallow. The ability to withstand attacks from other powers is too weak, and it will not last long before it will fall again. Australia is different. The first reason is that the territory is large enough, the depth is sufficient, and there are no powerful countries around. Even if the Netherlands wants to develop, it is very easy to expand outward. This is the opposite of mainland Europe. There is no direction for the Netherlands to expand there. The population is not good, and the economy is not worse than ours. Moreover, the Netherlands is surrounded by wars on all four sides, which is very easy to be affected, and the economic impact is also increasing. My great-grandfather gave Ceylon and the Cape of Good Hope to Britain, and then he was able to get the support of Britain to restore the country. The Netherlands can no longer lose Australia, so it must be defended in place, so as not to become someone else's wedding dress again. After sighing for a while, William Ivey said to Mackay Shun, "Let's talk about the situation in Greece. Your Majesty, we have basically completed the deployment in Greece. The people have been driven by emotions and the business community has asked King Otto to step down. Should we continue to push for the next step? Since the opening has already begun in Greece, then," William Ivey said sternly, "no one can stop the progress of the Netherlands. Greece, we are determined to win, let's get started." Chapter 141, Greek Upheaval. We have now obtained the support of the French Empire, the Kingdom of Prussia, and the Kingdom of Sweden. Britain also gained approval because of the transaction during the Belgian situation. In addition to Spain, Portugal and the Southern German Confederation headed by Austria, there are still the Ottoman Empire and the Russian Empire. Your Majesty, we have now obtained the support of more than half of the 6 major powers. The Russian Empire has a close relationship with the Netherlands, so there is no need to worry. But on the Austrian side, because the current king of Greece, Otto I, is a prince of the Kingdom of Bavaria, it is a bit difficult to deal with. Franz Joseph I is a man who knows the times. He will know what to do. Besides, don't forget that the current situation of the Austrian Empire is not good. They will not easily become bad people, because they have fewer and fewer friends and more enemies. Although the Netherlands is not big, if they offend the Kingdom of the Netherlands, they will suffer. If you don't believe it, just wait and see. Greece has long had irredentism, and every Greek dreams of restoring the Byzantine Empire. There were 2.4 million Greeks in the Ottoman Empire. In Constantinople, Thessaloniki, Smyrna and other places, the Greeks there were particularly demanding. These places also became the activity center of Greek merchants in the Ottoman Empire, and Crete was always ready for rebellion. At the beginning, Otto I placed himself in these patriotic actions, which attracted the recognition of the Greeks, won their trust, and used this to promote that he was here to restore the original Byzantine Empire. This became a huge opportunity for him to win the hearts of the people. Under the pressure of the German Confederation led by Austria and the Russian Empire, the Patriarch of Constantinople formally recognized the independence and autonomy of the Greek Orthodox Church in 1850. The Orthodox Tsarist Russian Empire, which believed in the same faith as Greece, gradually replaced Britain as the protector of Greek interests. In 1850, the Patriarch of Constantinople formally recognized the independence and autonomy of the Greek Orthodox Church. The Russian Empire, which believed in the same Orthodox Christianity as Greece, gradually replaced Britain as the protector of Greek interests. In 1859, Austria and Italy fought for Venice. Otto I and his Greek subjects had their first disagreement, and the Greeks stood on the side of Italy, which wanted to be independent. Otto I stood on the side of his relative, Emperor Franz Joseph I of the Austrian Empire. In the end, Italy won with the unexpected support of Napoleon III of France. Otto I was frustrated and got nothing in the end. He also lost some people's hearts, implying that he cared about the interests of his motherland and family, and was a king in Greece, but his heart was not in Greece. Greece began to be dissatisfied with him, and Otto I naturally noticed this change, so he tried to attack the Ottoman Turkey to restore his prestige, but because of the last lesson, he did not get the approval of the government and the people, because many people suspected that he was selfish. However, even so, Otto and his Greek subjects lived in peace, but the strange thing was that Otto I had no descendants, and his brother was unwilling to change from Catholicism to Orthodoxy, so in 1855, the issue of succession was put on the agenda of the national government, but Otto I chose to support it. This angered many people again. Under these operations of Otto I, nearly half of the Greeks had given up their confidence in him. After Otto I refused to allow new Greek politicians to be elected to the parliament to prevent people from Bavaria from continuing to occupy key government positions and being taken down by the Greeks, the Greek elites were even more annoyed. Otto I also secretly opposed the Greek Prime Minister Weston Canasri, slandered him, and finally went to jail. The strange thing is that these things were exposed and published in major Greek newspapers. For a time, Otto I became a street rat in Greece, and everyone shouted and envied him. For safety, he even replaced the Greek guards, and the ones around him were all Bavarians. An incident happened in September 1862, and the situation in Greece suddenly attracted more attention in Europe. Because this time, a student actually attempted to assassinate the Queen of Otto I. Although he failed, the student leader was regarded as a hero by the Greeks. With the arrest of the student leader, the streets of Greece began to demonstrate in large numbers at the end of October, which became a fuse and ignited the outbreak of the situation in Greece. When William IV passed through the Suez Canal to the Mediterranean and briefly visited Istanbul, the Ottoman Empire, to meet with the country's Sultan Abdulaziz, the two made a shameful deal, and the situation in Greece became more and more serious. On November 12, there were many rebellions in Greece, and the Greek army became more and more undisciplined. However, William IV visited Athens on November 15 without fear. During this period, William IV even visited the former Prime Minister Weston Canasri in prison. After talking with Otto I later, he expressed to the public that he hoped that the situation in Greece would be eased and urged Otto I to calm the situation in Greece as soon as possible. Such actions made the Greeks feel good about William IV. When William IV returned to Amsterdam on November 25, a rebellion broke out in Greece. It turned out that in Lamia, an important city on the way north from Athens in the southeast of the Pindus Mountains, a small leader declared rebellion in a small town. A few days later, various places responded one after another, and the Athenian troops also joined the rebellion. Among them was the former Prime Minister Weston Canasri, who was imprisoned. He quickly established a provisional government and announced the abolition of Otto I on the same day. At this time, Otto I had already seen that the situation was not good, and had already fled back to the Kingdom of Bavaria from the Ionian Sea and the Strait of Otranto. This speed was so fast that European countries were like boiling oil with water, and they almost exploded. How long has it been since a king was overthrown in Europe? This is too much. Therefore, the major royal families in Europe began to hold an emergency consultation meeting in Paris on December 5, 1862. Almost all the kings and emperors of European countries were present. All countries were suspicious and threatened by European countries without kings, and the incident in the United States was there. If a regime like the United States were to emerge in Europe, it would be a disaster for these royal families. In order to quickly turn Greece back into a country ruled by the royal family, while complaining that Otto I was a hopeless person, all countries had unconsciously rejected the candidates from the Kingdom of Bavaria and Austria. Europe was in a difficult situation at this time. The 6 major countries all wanted to place their own princes and other candidates in Greece, so that they would have one more ally. However, Metternich had the ability to do so at the beginning, but now there were no such people in European countries. Even the countries within the German Confederation were rejected, especially the Russian Empire and France, and the United Kingdom also agreed. Even the Ottoman Empire did not agree with the German Confederation to come up with a new king candidate this time. So the 6 major countries naturally understood that they had no chance, so they all turned their attention to other smaller countries. Sweden's population was not good enough, but Prince Oscar could have been one, but Charles XV disagreed because he had no male offspring, and Oscar's line was the future heir to Sweden. Because the 4th brother was an artist, he had no nationality, and he was over 30 years old and had been married for several years without any offspring, so Charles XV also refused. Spain's population was not strong either, so it was a no-brainer, and Portugal was even worse. Belgium was originally a possibility, but Leopold II knew that the Netherlands had ambitions for this, so he could only do a favor and chose not to participate. Chapter 142 Emergency Meeting in Paris. The Netherlands was not originally among the choices, but the former king of the Netherlands, William III, was proposed by Charles XV of Sweden, and was approved by Napoleon III, Emperor of France, and William I of Prussia. When Queen Victoria of the United Kingdom did not object and Ottoman agreed, everyone else began to choose to default. This made King Louis I of Portugal and King Victor Emmanuel I of Italy feel depressed. They looked at each other, and the father-in-law and son-in-law saw that the other party was unhappy. King Victor Emmanuel I of Italy raised objections, and Austria used to be at odds with Italy over the sovereignty of Venice, but surprisingly, it agreed with this point of view. This quickly brought a meeting to deadlock. The seating arrangement in Paris this time was also very realistic. At the top of a long conference table sat the host Napoleon I, and on his left in the first row were Queen Victoria of the United Kingdom and Joseph I of Austria. On the right, Alexander I of the Russian Empire, who was close to Napoleon III, was followed by William I of Prussia and Abdulaziz, Sultan of the Ottoman Empire. This is the difference in status and closeness. The right is respected in Europe. On the right side of the second floor are Isabel I of Spain, William IV of the Netherlands, Frederick VI of Denmark, and Charles XV of Sweden. On the left are Victor Emmanuel I of Italy, Louis I of Portugal, Leopold I of Belgium, and Maximilian I of Bavaria. The rest are the principalities of the German Confederation and other countries on the Barbary Peninsula, who are basically just bystanders. I say, it's not a solution for everyone to keep wasting time like this. I wonder if it's okay to select from the principalities. King Louis I of Portugal seemed to say impatiently, I think, it's no good just to stir-fry the meat. After all, everyone knows the problem of loyalty. I'm not saying that it sounds bad, but the incident in Greece this time was caused by the problem of loyalty. Otto I actually arranged for more than half of the important positions in the Kingdom of Greece to be held by candidates from the Kingdom of Bavaria, and the parliament is still restrictive. This is the main reason for the dissatisfaction of the Greek people. Louis I smiled kindly at William IV across Queen Victoria in front of him and Alexander II opposite her, and reminded him kindly, His Majesty William II has been the King of the Netherlands for more than 10 years. No one would think that he was disloyal to the Netherlands, at least the Greeks would not think so. Because if he could be disloyal to the Netherlands for more than 10 years, how could the Greeks believe that he would be loyal to Greece? Yes, William II was loyal, and the Greeks suspected that it was another Otto I who came with the intention of being loyal to the Netherlands. Disloyal, Greece thinks that he is not even loyal to his motherland, so Greece naturally does not dare to accept such a person. Everyone looked at Louis I in surprise. No one expected that Louis I, who had just inherited the throne of his brother Pedro V last November, was so eloquent. All of a sudden, it seemed that he had blocked the hope of William II of the Netherlands to go south to the Mediterranean to inherit the Greek king. Emmanuel II looked at his son-in-law and was very satisfied. Queen Victoria's expression moved, but she did not show it. She just looked between Emmanuel II and Louis I intentionally or unintentionally. Napoleon III was not surprised. It seemed that it had nothing to do with him. He was just the host this year and was a good host. Alexander II showed interest and looked at Queen Victoria. The latter rolled his eyes at him. Alexander II shook his head and said, "First love is no longer, things have changed." Then he was silent. But I don't know whether he was referring to Queen Victoria, Alexander II's first love, or the current situation of dramatic changes in Europe. William I was the calmest, turning back from time to time to chat with William IV behind him, and he was quite comfortable, as if he didn't care about the throne from the beginning. But Joseph I of Austria, who was opposite him, was gnashing his teeth in hatred. Unfortunately, the situation was stronger than the person. Look at his current seat, and think about the Metternich period, when Vienna of the Austrian Empire was the host of the European Conference. Today's Paris Conference made him reluctantly suppress his dissatisfaction. But what he didn't know was that William I saw everything, and his plan for the future of Prussia had a better chance of success. Your Majesty William I, look across at the opposite side. Do you feel that this world is full of opportunities? Look at the followers behind His Majesty Joseph I over there. They all look dissatisfied. A little provocation at this time will cause a domino effect. By then, Prussia's position in the German Confederation will be really difficult to shake. William I was shocked and quickly turned around to give William IV a shut-up look. At the same time, he looked worriedly at Alexander II 1 meter away and Isabel II behind him, then looked at the Ottoman Sultan Abdulaziz who was taking action, and the Danish King Frederick VI behind him. He was relieved to see that their faces did not change. He whispered, "Are you threatening me? Your Majesty, do you think I need to threaten you? I'm just jealous. If Prussia can help us take Greece and reduce Austria's southward passage, then with a friendly relationship between Prussia and the Netherlands, it will only benefit Prussia and not harm it. Not to mention the long term, just the Prussian warships and cargo ships docking in the Mediterranean. I think King William II of Greece will not refuse you to stop in Athens. What do you think?" William I was stunned, looked at him meaningfully, then turned around and said to Louis I of Portugal, "I think Your Majesty Louis I has gone a little too far." Everyone was attracted by William I's words. In fact, when he was whispering with William IV just now, everyone saw it. Although they couldn't hear it because the voice was too low, the intimacy of the two's actions had already shown that the two had a close personal relationship, combined with Hope's recent alliance. This made Joseph I secretly annoyed that William IV of the Netherlands did not give Austria face. At the same time, he was also a little surprised that William I stood up at this time. Shouldn't a big country come out and express its position last? This was also the idea of other heads of state. Alexander II became even more interested. He turned around and smiled softly to Isabel II behind him. It seems that the good show is about to begin. Isabel II also smiled and said, "Yes, William IV is indeed a good king." What kind of comment is this? Alexander II was embarrassed for a moment. Queen Victoria and Napoleon III opposite him held back their laughter, but still pouted their mouths slightly. This made Alexander II smile even more bitterly. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 143 Isabel II, I believe in the House of Orange in Nassau. After Louis I looked at him in confusion, William I said leisurely, "William II is loyal, no one will deny it, and Karl XV's recommendation of him to Greece cannot represent a change in his loyalty to the Netherlands. He has turned into a person of bad conduct, just like you and me. Loyalty to one's own country is the best character, and it is also the most needed in a professional ethics. He has given the throne of the Netherlands to his eldest son William IV, and the development of the Netherlands has proved that his approach is right. By the way, I also want to have such a descendant so that I can retire early, but unfortunately I don't have it." These words made Queen Victoria frown. His son, Crown Prince Frederick, is her son-in-law. She glanced at William I with dissatisfaction, and finally looked at William IV behind William I. She recovered instantly. That's right, in front of William IV, her eldest son Edward didn't seem to be good enough. William I didn't know that he had just angered Queen Victoria, his relative. He continued, "To generalize, when loyalty is needed, you must be loyal, but when you change the object, loyalty also needs to change. Then I think William II can also make such a change. After all, the Netherlands can inherit Greece without any worries. This is a good thing for William II to be passed down as a good story. After all, his son is the King of the Netherlands, his father is the King of Greece, and his youngest son is the Grand Duke of Luxembourg. This is also a good story in Europe. Louis I smiled faintly and said indifferently, I did not deny that William I's loyalty and morality were problematic, but I felt that since there were better candidates, why bother to find a candidate who had been king? He had a candidate? William IV looked at Emmanuel II next to him, thoughtful. Everyone else looked at Louis I in surprise. William I narrowed his eyes and asked, who does His Majesty Louis I think is the right candidate? Louis I said, since the Greeks need a king who can do practical things for Greece, and other countries also need a Greece with a king, I think the candidates can be expanded. Frederick VI, I heard that your Crown Prince Christian of Denmark has a 19-year-old Prince Frederick and a 17-year-old Prince George. Is that right? Frederick VI's face changed when he heard this, and he was secretly annoyed that the other party had taken this fire to him. Despite this, he still admitted it, because it only took a little investigation to understand, and he did not deny it. That's right. Louis I smiled at Emmanuel II and said, I heard that Italy has Crown Prince Umberto, who is 18 years old, and Prince Amadeo, who is 17 years old. Emmanuel II pretended to hesitate for a while before saying, indeed. Louis I looked around at everyone, and then said, look, these are the candidates. I won't talk about the Crown Prince. The prince is either 18 years old or almost 18 years old. Compared to William II, who is already 45 years old, his future rule over Greece may be more stable and longer. What do you think? I have said everything. The rest is up to you all to decide. Louis I was about to walk back to his seat, but he suddenly turned around and said to William IV with a slightly provocative expression, I wonder what the King of the Netherlands thinks, haha. Everyone saw this scene, and they didn't know that Louis I was deliberately provoking William IV of the Netherlands. It was obvious that he was targeting William IV. The people here are all powerful people. There is no translator here, because the whole process is speaking French, the most widely used official language of the upper class in Europe. These days, if you say you don't know English in Europe, maybe no one will say anything to you, but if you are a noble or powerful capitalist in the upper class of Europe, and you don't know French, then many circles will refuse your participation. This is the reality. Queen Victoria whispered to Alexander II across from her, do you think that little guy William IV will stop because of this? Napoleon III, who was at the top, and Joseph I of Austria, who was her subordinate, heard this and pricked up their ears to hear Alexander II's opinion. At the same time, this is actually an attitude, because from Alexander II's words, they can find useful information, whether the Tsarist Russia, which has not yet expressed its position, will support William II of the Netherlands. After all, the Tsarist Russian Empire is now gradually moving closer to the Tsarist Russian Orthodox branch, as the Orthodox Church has slowly led them and established itself with the Patriarch of Istanbul, and there is a trend of branches suppressing the main trunk. The influence of Tsarist Russia on Greece is growing. Moreover, the military strength of Tsarist Russia on land has always been huge in the Balkan Peninsula. Whether Alexander II supports or not will directly affect the final selection of the new king of Greece. In terms of this influence, Britain is not even as good as Tsarist Russia. I have worked with him. In this regard, I think Queen Victoria and you have also worked with him, and even His Majesty Napoleon II and you are the same. This little guy is very smart. I don't think he is a person who doesn't fight back when being beaten. This is not his style. Look, facing the provocation of Louis I, his calm expression, does it look like he is in trouble? Several people looked at it, and it was really like this. William IV didn't know that the people at the top were talking about his turn. When he stood up, everyone looked at him. He came to Louis I and first greeted Joseph I as a gentleman. Then, just when everyone thought he would challenge Louis I, he continued to talk to Joseph I. William IV, Your Majesty Joseph I heard that the Austrian Empire is recruiting 50,000 soldiers recently. Many people don't understand why William IV asked this question. Joseph I, yes, the world is too chaotic, it's just to increase self-defense capabilities. Why, the Netherlands has any objections? Does the Netherlands have any objections to Austria's conscription? Many people don't think so. If there are any objections, it should be Prussia and Italy. The Netherlands and Austria are separated by several countries? William IV shook his head. Of course I have no objection, but I heard that Austria has made a big move in the Gulf of Guinea in Africa. I am just curious. It has been divided up by various countries. Where is Austria's 10,000-man army going? Could it be Ethiopia? Joseph I's face changed drastically, and he looked at William IV in disbelief. Seeing this, others didn't understand that what William IV said should be true. Small countries don't care, but big countries like this are dissatisfied. William I of Prussia, who occupied Somalia in the east, was busy with his eyes, calculating the gains and losses quickly. He was also shocked that Austria had ambitions for Ethiopia in the east. He even suspected that Austria was like a dogskin plaster, following Prussia wherever it went. Was it for the purpose of dealing with Prussia? Or was it just looking for an excuse to shut up other countries? After all, Prussia took Cameroon, and Austria took Nigeria, Prussia took Somalia, and now Austria has set its sights on Ethiopia next to it. Isn't this following Prussia's footsteps? In addition to William I's furious change of color, Emmanuel II also looked bad, because Italy was scared away by Prussia on the issue of Somalia and retreated to Eritrea and Libya. The original intention of taking Somalia was to take it, and then, together with Eritrea, form a joint attack from the north to the south to take Ethiopia, but now Austria is actually going to take the initiative? For Victor Emmanuel II, this was being cut off. However, he had been in politics for many years and ruled Italy for many years, so he suppressed the idea of opposing Austria's southward advance to Ethiopia. However, William IV seemed to see through his idea and provoked him again, digging a deep pit for him, and it was a pit that made everyone present deeply afraid of Italy. William IV saw that Victor Emmanuel II and William I had changed color. However, he seemed unsatisfied, and smiled at Napoleon II and Queen Victoria, who were calm at the top, and said, "Look everyone, Italy is indeed the upstart in European politics. It gave Somalia to Prussia without changing its color, but as for Ethiopia, it is said that many Italians have spread the rumor that Austria has stationed heavy troops in Eritrea and is ready to move south at any time. But now that Austria has done this, His Majesty Emmanuel doesn't care. What a great tolerance. But it is also reasonable to believe that His Majesty Emmanuel II is not worried. Today, the Kingdom of Italy almost rules the Apennine Peninsula, and occupies Libya's vast colonial territory on the south side of the Mediterranean. With the attack from the north and the south, who among the European countries dares not give face to Italy in the Mediterranean? And not long ago, His Majesty Emmanuel II married his eldest daughter to Her Majesty Louis I. This is a strong alliance in the Mediterranean. If the eldest or second son of His Majesty Emmanuel II becomes the King of Greece at this Paris conference, William IV thought of Louis I and smiled. Although his tone was not cold, he said coldly, "Your Majesty Louis I, your father-in-law and brother-in-law have joined forces to occupy a huge force in the earth. No wonder your son-in-law is so fierce in cheering for you. If it were me, I would do the same. However, I don't know whether the kings and emperors present here can fulfill your wishes." Louis I stared at William IV with embarrassment. Emmanuel I's face also changed drastically, but he still suppressed it, but his fists were clenched, showing his unrest now. William IV sneered in return, but he didn't say anything, and walked straight back to the second position on the second floor on the right. The elegant and noble Queen Isabella II of Spain turned her head and said in a loud voice, "I have heard that William IV has a sharp tongue, but today I finally saw it." William IV asked, "How is it?" Isabella II smiled and said, "It is indeed extraordinary." William IV smiled and said, "The Philippines of Spain has developed too slowly in recent years. After the meeting, would your Majesty be willing to discuss the cooperation between the Netherlands and Spain in the Far East?" Isabella II laughed and said, "Of course I am willing." William IV, "What about my father's inheritance of the Greek throne?" Queen Isabella II saw that Louis I and Emmanuel II were staring at her, and even Queen Victoria opposite her put down her teacup. She smiled slightly and deliberately said loudly, "Spain and the Netherlands have been friendly for generations, and when the Netherlands became independent from Spain, we separated peacefully. In this case, William II is not bad. I think William II of the Netherlands is capable of this position. The Nassau-Orange family is a top noble family worthy of the trust of European countries." Chapter 144 William IV has no right of succession. As Isabel II stood up, all the heads of state in the meeting hall showed strangeness. The Mediterranean belongs to everyone, and they do not want to allow one country to dominate. This is the consensus of European countries. William IV hit Italy's Achilles heel this time. In order to prevent the French Empire from dominating the Mediterranean, Britain actually helped Italy's predecessor, the Kingdom of Sardinia, to break away from Austria. It destroyed the relationship between Italy and France, supported Italy to get rid of France's interference and control, and established a French anti-Austrian country for itself in the Mediterranean. Now that Italy is developing too fast, Queen Victoria naturally doesn't like it. The relationship between Italy, which used to rely on Britain to fight against France and Austria, has changed. Therefore, this time Italy wants to take over Greece. With the excuse offered by William IV, she gladly accepted it. I also think that His Majesty William II is good. He has experience and is not a burden to me. He can inherit the throne in Greece without any burden. He is a good candidate. After Queen Victoria, King Frederick VI of Denmark was angry that Louis I had dragged Denmark into the water, so he said simply, "I think William II is the author's candidate." The messy Greece needs an experienced king to succeed him the most, and he has experience in balancing relations with other countries. Who is more suitable than him? Others also expressed their opinions. Basically, they all supported it, or they did not oppose it. Generally speaking, Greece needs an heir from a smaller medium-sized country to avoid destroying the balance of the big countries. Among the small and medium-sized countries, the Netherlands rarely had a quarrel with other countries, and the relationship was not bad. Even the United Kingdom chose to support it when its relationship with the Netherlands was so bad, so what other countries had to oppose it? Of course, after the support of Alexander II, the Russian king, the only ones left were the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, Joseph I of Austria, and Emmanuel II and Louis I of Italy. Although the heir this time did not require unanimous support for the candidate to be competent, if the four countries disagreed, with the influence of these four countries in the Mediterranean. Portugal is at a key position in and out of the Atlantic Ocean. Italy, needless to say, is a boot deep in the Mediterranean, and the Ottoman Empire is in the eastern part of the Mediterranean. Austria's influence in the Adriatic Gulf. This will be a huge obstacle for William II to rule Greece in the future, for fear that his right of succession will not be recognized in the future. Therefore, many people looked at William IV and several heads of state who had not yet expressed their opinions with interest. Karl XV and Frederick VI were secretly anxious. They had formed an alliance with the Netherlands. If William II of the Netherlands took Greece, it would be a lot of benefits for the two countries. Seeing William IV looking over, Abdulaziz, the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, unexpectedly said, "I agree with everyone else and think that William II is indeed suitable to govern Greece." Joseph I was incredulous. He was very puzzled as to why the Sultan would choose to agree with him, but when he saw Emmanuel II and the other two, and recalled William IV's seemingly kind reminder just now, he already understood the problem. In the end, he sighed inwardly, and then said, "Austria has no objection to William II inheriting the Kingdom of Greece." Louis I and Emmanuel II looked at each other, the former showing an expression of trying his best, and the latter nodded with a wry smile. Louis I was naturally unwilling to let William II win like this, especially not wanting William IV to be too proud. So, he stood up and said, "We in Portugal naturally have no objection to His Majesty William II inheriting, but I would like to raise a question, that is, if His Majesty William II dies in old age, who will inherit this king and how will he inherit?" Everyone was stunned, and William IV was also stunned. Yes, it is impossible for William IV to inherit directly. In that case, if the Netherlands and Greece belong to the same king, then William IV's status in Europe will be greatly improved. Even Queen Victoria looked at him with ill intentions this time, suspecting that William IV had this intention from the beginning. William I and others were wary of William IV. Even Frederick VI and Charles XV looked at William IV with fear. The Netherlands is on good terms with them now, but there is still a big gap between their ages and William IV. If they are strong 100 years later, will the Netherlands occupy an overwhelming position in the Nordic alliance, and Denmark and Sweden will become vassals of the Netherlands? It is hard to say. Good Louis I. He then looked straight at Louis I. This man is 2 years older than me, 24 years old. He inherited the throne of Portugal only 1 month earlier than I did. I originally thought he was a rookie who was lucky enough to be able to exercise real rule in Portugal. But now it seems that although this guy has not traveled through time, he is a political elite. He quickly stabilized the situation in Portugal and was able to take down all major factions in Portugal in less than a year. He turned his attention to foreign countries. It seems that he is a very conceited person. Now he is trying to trip me up again and again, and it is obvious that he wants to compete with me. William IV looked at Louis I and thought to himself, "It's a pity that many people don't know that if history doesn't change, my father, William III, would marry Austria soon after his mother died, and gave birth to a baby girl in 1879, the future Queen Wilhelmina of the Netherlands in the original world. I don't know if it will continue in this life. However, William IV has been here for so long, but the characters that should have appeared. He doesn't think that this future half-brother Queen Wilhelmina, who is the most beautiful in European history, will not appear. If she inherits the Greek throne, who can say anything?" Seeing that the heads of state of the major countries at the top all looked at him with scrutiny, William IV continued to smile, and he smiled at Louis I. "That's not bad. I declare here that I will not inherit the Greek throne. As for my brother Frederick, it is possible." With William IV announcing that he would not inherit the Greek throne, the position of the Greek king has been settled, that is, William III. The meeting also agreed on the result of the meeting, that is, William IV did not inherit the right to inherit the throne of the Kingdom of Greece. On December 8, 1862, the three-day Paris Conference officially ended, and the results of the conference were officially announced. William III of the Netherlands was officially recognized by all countries as the new King of Greece, and it was announced that on January 1, 1863, a succession ceremony would be held in Athens under the supervision of various countries. As the results of the conference caused a sensation in various countries, William IV had no right of succession, which meant that his younger brother Frederick, the heir to the Grand Duke of Luxembourg, became the only heir to the Kingdom of Greece. This made Prince Frederick of Luxembourg happy when he heard the news, and more people surrounded him than before. There is another chapter later. Chapter 145, Prepare to stab Spain again. Behind the convening of the Paris Conference, many people believe that it is the grandest European conference after the Vienna Conference held in 1815. In this conference, all the heads of state of European countries are present, and they are all royal kings and emperors, no longer the prime ministers and other heads of government cabinets in Europe. Many people think that this is a symbol of the concentration of royal power in Europe again. But there are also different opinions. They believe that this is because the 6 major countries are all powerful kings participating, and it is not appropriate to send cabinet heads, so the kings of small and medium-sized countries will go, which will increase the chances of reaching an agreement between countries. Among them is Queen Isabella II, who is not very strong in the country. It turned out that after the meeting, she held a secret meeting between the 2 countries with William IV of the Netherlands, and finally reached military and commercial cooperation between the 2 countries in the Far East, including the 2 countries holding a large and small-scale performance in the Pacific region every quarter, and announced that in the Far East, the 2 countries will understand each other's positions and coordinate to resist and advance together. To put it simply, the 2 countries will appear as an alliance in the Far East. This made many countries frown, especially Britain and France. Britain was nibbling away at Myanmar bit by bit, and after France seized South Vietnam this year, it also began to advance towards the Central Bayou, and even began to test the Kingdom of Siam from time to time. At this time, Spain across the sea actually chose the Netherlands to form an alliance. For both countries, it must be said that this was a signal. Obviously, the 2 countries expressed dissatisfaction with Britain and France. However, I don't know if it was intentional. Spain and the Netherlands also accepted Prussia as a member of the alliance. Prussia even announced that it had an agreement with the Kingdom of Siam and would lease the southeastern port of Kampot in Siam for 50 years at a price of £100,000 per year. With the announcement of this news, the Far East has ushered in more attention from Europe. However, this was only short-lived, because everyone was still selected by the powers to inherit the position of King of Greece, William III, who occupied the front page. Most people think that the powerful countries have lost hope in rebuilding the situation in the Balkan Peninsula. Napoleon III did not seem to make any move at the Paris Conference. In fact, inviting countries to attend has already balanced the interests of the major powers. This can be seen from the participation of the British Tsarist Russia, the Ottoman Empire, and Austria-Prussia. Moreover, after this conference, the relationship between the Netherlands, Austria, Portugal, and Italy became worse and worse, and even the Greek issue is not satisfactorily resolved. This is also something that all countries have foreseen. After all, after centuries of rule by the Ottoman Empire, Bulgaria and several Orthodox Slavs began to awaken. After this conference, They were no longer satisfied with the status of the principality and began to ask Tsarist Russia and Austria to establish a nation-state. This caused headaches for the two countries. But what was even more troublesome for Tsarist Russia was that after this conference, other countries, including Britain, France, and even Italy, began to extend olive branches to the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire and expressed support for the Ottoman Empire to develop its economy and industry. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that the intention of these countries was to allow a powerful Ottoman Empire to continue to prevent the Russian Empire from moving southward and expanding to the Balkans and the Indian Ocean. In short, during and after the Paris Conference, agreements between countries were scattered everywhere. On December 20, 1862, Spain developed eastward in Western Sahara, but it had fought with France in Mauritania and Chega many times. This location is too important, because the Western Sahara Desert is huge, but Chega is a key place from Western Sahara to the east, including Western Sahara in the west, Mauritania in the south, French Mali in the southeast, and French Algeria in the north. Therefore, this place is a key location that both Spain and France must take. Chief of Staff Mark Rude sighed. After William IV returned to Amsterdam, he couldn't wait to convene a Privy Council meeting. Since the Minister of Industry, Wim Cote, the Minister of Education, Ruud Bells, the Chief of Staff of the Army, Joppel and others are now in Melbourne, Far East, gradually forming a small cabinet in the Far East, and are also increasing their efforts in the construction of the Far East. The current Dutch cabinet is temporarily short of personnel and has not been supplemented. Therefore, in addition to the Prime Minister Thorbecke, the Minister of the Interior, General, the Minister of Finance, Jan P. Capello, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Gijsbert van, and the Minister of Agriculture, Ern Bevan, these civil servants were present at this meeting. In addition, there are the Chief of Staff of the Military, Mark Rude, the Minister of the Navy, Jan Peter, the Chief of the Navy Staff, Joseph, and the Minister of the Army, Peter de Jong. The Director of International Intelligence of the Netherlands, Mackay Sean, and the Director of Royal Intelligence of the Netherlands, Bill Charlie. The Minister of Agriculture, Ern Bevan, Gijsbert. Spain now has mutual assistance with us in the Far East, and France has mutual assistance with us in the Indian Ocean. Will this lead to a contradiction in the position of the Netherlands? Gijsbert van was stunned, and then said professionally, "No." Why? Ern Bevan continued to ask. Because all European countries are doing the same thing. Britain has had power politics with France many times in the Mediterranean and the English Channel, but in the Far East, both countries are taking joint actions, especially in the direction of the Qing dynasty. In North America and Mexico, the two countries have also taken joint actions against the United States. Therefore, local cooperation and competition in other local areas are commonplace for major countries. As Gijsbert Feng explained, many people also understood that the diplomacy of European countries was not generalized. Gijsbert Feng said worriedly, but the current situation in Spain is not stable. There are many factions in this country, pro-French, pro-Portuguese, and pro-British. There are also pro-Austrian factions that have an inseparable relationship with Austria. These forces are not something that Isabel II can handle. The Netherlands is allied with such a Spain. Can Spain help us? As long as people in Europe who care about the domestic situation in Spain, no one does not understand. Gijsbert van added, from the time Isabella II took power in 1843, it was the time of the Great Revolution in France, and waves of revolution came one after another. The liberal opposition in Spain became increasingly powerful, and this period led to endless court conspiracies and rebellions in the Kingdom of Spain. The Queen had to rely on frequent changes of government to deal with it. In the past 20 years, Spain has replaced more than 20 governments, promulgated 5 constitutions, launched 13 riots, and various groups of sycophants have come to power. Isabella II herself also lived an absurd and decadent life, and sometimes interfered with cabinet politics in a willful and irrational way. Moreover, the Queen seemed to be particularly fond of anti-Dong elements in the army and the church, which made her even more dissatisfied and hateful in the hearts of the Spanish. She even suffered many assassination attempts, but she escaped by luck. However, after experiencing military rule, the reformist Espartero, who came to power in 1854, soon came to power due to internal discord. The liberals came to power. Anyway, these parties kept rotating, and the warlords, reformers, and liberals came every 2 or 3 years, which made the political ecology of Spain astonishing. During her entire reign, the lives of the Spanish people did not improve. Because the traitors and the army controlled the Spanish government, everyone was cautious about their own interests, which reduced people's expectations of Isabella II to the lowest level. Many people hope that her reign will end soon, and the 6-year-old Prince Alfonso will grow up quickly, inherit Spain, and lead Spain out of the predicament as soon as possible. Hespert van said to William IV, "Your Majesty, an ally like this may be a burden to the Netherlands. After all, many alliance agreements between the two countries will be shaken due to the chaotic situation in the country, and the execution will also miss the good opportunity." "That means you don't agree with the alliance between the Netherlands and Spain?" William IV asked Hespert van while looking to the side. In addition to Thorbecke, Mark Rude's face did not change. Well, there were two intelligence directors who knew some of William IV's situation, so they knew more inside information. William IV smiled and looked at Mark Rude. "My chief of staff, how about you tell me what you think?" Mark Rude stood up and performed the standard etiquette of saluting to military superiors, and then said to Hespert van, "Everything has its good and bad sides. It is wrong to only see the bad side or the good side of many things. I remember that I was just a low-level officer and had 2 guards before. One was very hard-working, but his gun skills were not good, and the other was very talented in gun skills, but not hard-working. At that time, I was looking for a guard who was very good at guns, but later I chose the one with poor talent. Why? Because the person with good talent likes to be tricky and likes to compare, but in this profession, this is not in line with it, even though his gun skills give him extra points. The person with poor talent later asked me why I chose him, and I only told him that hard work is his strongest talent for status, and your obedience is also one of my choices. The Netherlands needs strong allies, which will bring us great help, but it will also create threats. On the contrary, if the Netherlands has weak allies, then for us, it is actually a kind of protection. I have studied Britain. Britain likes all kinds of people the most. It likes to make allies everywhere and help these allies deeply. It is good for a strong and stable regime. Britain is very friendly. But when it is weak, Britain will show its claws and tear this fragile ally apart to take away the interests it has long been eyeing. Therefore, I think your Majesty knows that Spain is in chaos, but he still wants to ally with Spain. Even if the idea is not this, it is not much different. Papa. Thorbecke applauded first. Obviously, he had similar ideas. Others also woke up. Love and kill each other. William IV sighed. Europe has never had real allies, only eternal interests. The Philippines is good, especially the South, your Majesty. Will this cause dissatisfaction among various countries, especially Spain? Hespert van worried. William IV smiled and said, "Who said we should take action first? Then who will take action?" Everyone looked at him curiously, even Thorbecke and Mark Rude. Chapter 146, Isabel II attacked by Portugal. Your Majesty, after more than half a year, we have already established a firm foothold in North Kalimantan province in the Far East. Diplomat Garjakov said, the fleets between Vladivostok and China have begun to cruise each other. Alexander I said with satisfaction, not bad. Then he frowned and pointed to the map and said, however, that place is still too small, and the location is that we are almost surrounded in it, which is very difficult for expanding influence. Alexander II's words attracted Garjakov's approval. Yes, the Russian Empire has already given North Kalimantan province to them in the Far East with the Netherlands. Will the Russian Empire be willing to be trapped there? The answer is no. Developing southward, the current relationship between the Netherlands and the Russian Empire makes it impossible for the Russian Empire to take action. Even if it wants to take action, it must weigh the strength of the Netherlands there. Although they can't figure out the strength of the Netherlands there now, all countries are speculating that the strength must not be underestimated, otherwise Britain would not have made concessions to the Netherlands again and again. To the west and north, they would face Britain, and Tsarist Russia would never do that. Then, to the east of the Sulawesi Sea, there are the Spanish Philippines. Alexander II and Garjakov looked at each other and saw the hate in each other's eyes. Your Majesty, there is some internal unrest in Spain now. That's just right. They can't manage it. We can help them. By the way, Isabel II, a woman, has too heavy a burden. I will help her share it. I think she should be grateful to me. Garjakov nodded and said with certainty, it should be so. In a short moment, the king and his ministers completed a task that determined the fate of Spain's Far East colonies, but at this time, They in Madrid did not know it. Now Madrid is still fighting for power, and Isabel II is still sitting on the wall. Louis I would naturally not be willing to be frustrated again and again in the face of William IV at the Paris conference, so he made a bold decision. He intervened in the internal affairs of Spain, pointing to Isabel II, who, in his opinion, was an accomplice of William IV's pride at the Paris conference. Louis I was very smart. He did not directly choose political forces, but attacked Isabel II with rumors first. On December 25, 1862, a news item was seen in many tabloids in Spain. According to the news report, after the First Carlist War, Maria Christiana, the mother of Isabel II and the Queen Mother of Spain at the time, who was opposed by many people, handed over the regency power to General Baldomero Espartero, the representative of the Spanish military at the time. He ran to Paris with his lover to live together. Espartero carried out some radical reforms, which resulted in a backlash from the conservatives. The Spanish prime minister was later overthrown by the conservative General Narvaez. Espartero went into exile in the UK, and then returned to Spain with the help of the UK and re-established a pro-British party. The Narvaez faction, on the other hand, established a cabinet led by Joaquin Maria López, which was pro-French. At that time, the López cabinet induced the Spanish Congress to declare Isabella an adult, but she was actually only 13 years old. 3 years later, conservatives from Castile forced the 16-year-old Isabella II to marry her cousin, Francisco de Assisi de Bourbon. At that time, Isabella II actually had many suitors in the European royal family, but Francisco won because of his support in France, so he was forced to agree to marry this sissy husband. After the marriage, the queen also found that the lace on the husband's clothes was more than hers, and the two lived separately after the marriage. This time, the major Spanish media reported on this life after separation. These newspapers said based on rumors that all the children of Isabella II were not her husband, Prince Francisco, because the prince was a lover of that. The media still believe that the father of the only surviving boy of Isabel II, the 6-year-old Crown Prince Alfonso, was actually the child of Queen Isabel II and a lover, Enrique Puerta, the commander of the guards. This was too much, and the Spanish cabinet quickly came out to refute the rumor and criticize these media for making things up. The royal matron, the spokesperson for the Queen of Spain, even stood up to scold these media for doing so, and asked the cabinet to bring the author of this article to justice, and on behalf of the Queen, asked all major Spanish media to destroy all newspapers and apologize to the Queen. At the same time, the Queen personally clarified her innocence in the Madrid Daily and the Spanish Herald, and asked the people not to be fooled by the despicable villain. Unfortunately, there are still many small newspapers that continue to run reports in private. Among them, there are pro-Portuguese places such as Merida and Seville close to the Portuguese side. Many people here have a close ties with Portugal. When Spain was strong, these areas were the frontiers for absorbing Portuguese people. However, when Spain gradually declined, this area became the place of Portuguese influence. Therefore, many families have formed interest alliances with Portugal for generations. Moreover, the Queen has long been dissatisfied with her, so many people, once provoked by Portugal, are like kerosene, and they will catch fire at a touch. This craze is getting bigger and bigger. It is like spilling blood in the sea, which will soon attract a group of sharks to attack. In the direction of London, the cabinet of Downing Street even decided to support Louis I of Portugal after the cabinet meeting held by Viscount Palmerston. Viscount Palmerston suggested to the Queen, Spain has always been dissatisfied with Gibraltar in the hands of Britain, and resents it in its heart. Spain cannot rise again, otherwise, our strength in the Mediterranean will be severely compressed. In the end, the Queen agreed with Viscount Palmerston's view. Santiago de Compostela, Oviedo and other places in northern Spain, which have always been pro-British, also began to join this feast of crusade against the Queen. Britain and Portugal have always had a close relationship. Although Queen Victoria did not express support for Louis I at the Paris conference, she still saw Portugal's actions clearly as a compensation. Moreover, as many people in British politics worry, the Spanish people's reluctance to Gibraltar is the main reason why Britain supports the fight against Spain. With the participation of pro-British people, many pro-Italian Spaniards also began to agitate, especially in the Balearic Islands hanging overseas in the Mediterranean, where many people developed a bad impression of the Queen. With the attacks on Isabella II coming from several directions, Isabella II was naturally anxious, and the entire royal family was immersed in a panic. It seemed that at this moment, she felt that there were enemies everywhere. That night, she unexpectedly received requests for an interview from several people. Originally, at this time, she was no longer in the mood to meet anyone. But when she knew who the visitors were, she urgently summoned them because they were the French ambassador to Spain, the Dutch ambassador to Spain, and the Russian ambassador to Spain. Isabel II was delighted. Almost half of the provinces in Spain were calling for a crusade against her. They were dissatisfied with her style, and each one was more radical than the other. She was almost unable to bear it. This round was obviously manipulated by someone. From the beginning, it was Portugal that was at work. Louis I obviously couldn't escape. It's not hard to guess that when she was in Paris, she didn't give the other party face and supported William IV of the Netherlands. It's understandable that she would retaliate against her at this time. A few days ago, the Netherlands. Amsterdam. The telegram that Keynes just sent back shows that the situation in Spain is very unstable now. Queen Isabel II's position is precarious. If things continue to develop, she is likely to flee. Your Majesty, should we stand up and express our support for Spain? Hespot von asked. After all, the Queen of Spain has just signed a Far East Alliance agreement with us. It would be unreasonable not to make some statement at this time. Prime Minister Thorbecke said, no, it's not time yet. Everyone looked over, and Thorbecke said, don't forget that the Spanish cabinet is now in power with pro-French forces. I think France will not let Spain experience huge fluctuations at will. This is a risky move for France. Moreover, this is obviously aimed at the Spanish royal family. Don't forget that the Queen Mother is still in Paris. This move has questioned the legitimacy of the future royal family of Spain. This is a move to dig up the roots. How could France give up its vested interests? What does the Prime Minister mean? Ask Keynes to visit the Spanish royal palace together with the heads of the French and Russian embassies there. At this time, Isabel II should obviously agree to our conditions. The other two countries should think so too. However, it should not be us who put forward the conditions, but Tsarist Russia. William IV nodded after hearing this. Yes, the Netherlands, France and Spain have an alliance, so it is indeed not appropriate to take too much profit, but Tsarist Russia does not have this burden. Where are the benefits? Thorbecke's eyes sparkled with gold, and he smiled mysteriously. The Philippines is good, and that's where the interests of several of our countries meet. France. Paris. Napoleon III was also discussing this with his Prime Minister Olivier. Prime Minister Olivier, compared to Britain, we have too few colonies in the Far East, and we need a wider group of ports. What does your Majesty mean? Napoleon III, isn't there an opportunity now? The Philippines has a population of more than 7 million, which is a good market, but unfortunately Spain will not let go of this piece of fat meat. Then, we can get some benefits in other places. I think we should ask the person in charge of our embassy in Madrid to make a request to Isabel II. I see on this map that Balabac Island is good, and I think Spain will agree. Will Spain agree? Chapter 147, The Italian army approaches the border. Olivier saw that the place where Napoleon II pointed was a small island near Kalimantan. It is located in the Balabac Strait, with the Sulu Sea to the east and the huge Quang Nan He to the west. Across the sea is South Vietnam, which is now occupied by France. This location is very important to France, but for Spain, it is a place that can be abandoned. Spain is no longer confident in Britain, so handing this island to us can hand over the matter of Kalimantan to us, which will help them a lot. Olivier said, Your Majesty is right. Our relationship with Spain is as solid as a rock, and our recognition of the Spanish royal family has never changed. The relationship between the two countries is the strongest cornerstone for maintaining peace on the Iberian Peninsula, and no one can shake it. This is the purpose of our two countries. Here, we in France call on Spain and all relevant parties to stop attacking the Queen of Spain and give Spain a peaceful national environment. December 27, 1862. In Paris, French Prime Minister Olivier condemned the Spanish rumor-mongers for seriously injuring the Spanish royal family and swore to support the Spanish royal family and the government cabinet. Following closely behind were the Netherlands, Tsarist Russia and even Prussia, and the foreign ministries of various countries also made moves to support the Spanish royal family. Seeing the support of so many countries, the Spanish government slowly suppressed the restlessness and gradually restored peace. However, what the lower-class people don't know is that because of this incident, the upper-class queen, Nobles and cabinet paid a heavy price. The French Empire got Balabac Island at a low price in the Far East. Tsarist Russia also bought the Tuatai Islands in the Sulu archipelago at a low price. Prussia also bought the Tapur Islands next to it, and the Netherlands took the Sarangani Islands in the south of Mindanao. The Philippines is so far away from Spain that ordinary Spaniards did not notice any changes. The three countries of France, the Netherlands and Prussia benefited, and other countries soon knew it. Britain, Portugal and even Italy were very dissatisfied. They worked hard, but in the end, others benefited, but they ruined their relationship with Spain. Forget about Britain, at least they don't take those colonies seriously. But Portugal and Italy are different, especially Italy's Emmanuel II, who is heartbroken. Portugal at least has a large number of overseas colonies, not to mention African colonies such as Mozambique and Angola. Even the largest country in South America used to be theirs. Although it is not directly under the control now, there is no doubt that Brazil is close to Portugal. After all, the Brazilian emperor is still a direct relative of the Portuguese royal family within 3 generations. Originally, he wanted to make Spain unhappy in Spain, but with the intervention of France and the support of other countries, a royal crisis in Spain ended. Fortunately, before that, he had taken advantage of the royal crisis in Spain and sent Italian troops south. With the approval of Britain, he sent 20,000 Italian soldiers through the Suez Canal and landed in Eritrea, preparing to invade Ethiopia. This is a steal. When I think of the Austrian Empire of Joseph I preparing 50,000 troops, not even half of them have been recruited at this time. Emmanuel II was very proud of this. But what he didn't know was that with a discord between Portugal and Spain, Emmanuel II took the initiative in Ethiopia. This triggered a war between the European powers in Africa, turning Africa into a powder keg. Even Queen Victoria of the United Kingdom, who thought everything was under control, and Prime Minister Viscount Palmerston, were caught off guard. Addis Ababa, the capital of Ethiopia. King Tewodros II has been a little troubled recently, and he feels very stressed now. Because he suddenly discovered that now around Ethiopia, the major European powers have laid a net like heaven and earth, causing the indigenous neighbors around Ethiopia to fall and become colonies of these powers. Somalia in the east became a Prussian colony. The Netherlands and Kenya in the south, the United Kingdom and Sudan in the west, the Red Sea in the north, and Italy in Eritrea in the northwest. These countries are staring at Ethiopia covetously, as if we have become fat meat in their eyes. Sale, why do I feel that it was better in the past few years? Although there were constant wars at that time, they were all domestic wars in Ethiopia. At least at that time, Ethiopia was still a forgotten corner of the world. It was not like now, when the world began to pay attention to us. His son, the Crown Prince of Ethiopia, Sahle Mariam, was silent. In the first half of this century, Ethiopia was an easily forgotten corner. Many warlords and feudal lords in the country fought constantly, relying on the foothills to maintain this world, and the surrounding areas were surrounded and controlled by Muslim forces. It was almost isolated from the sea connecting the world. Against this background, his father, Tewodros II, appeared in 1855 at the age of 37. According to Ethiopian standards, he was a well-educated nobleman. He was not only familiar with his country, writing in Christian affairs, but also dabbled in the history of countries around the world. Even his father knew a little about Shakespeare's plays. But his father would not become merciful because of this. He was still very realistic. His father, Tewodros II, won a kingdom that did not belong to him through war. Coupled with the tragic situation of his youth, his father became eccentric and his temper became increasingly violent. Especially after each victory in a war with neighboring warlords, he would kill the soldiers of these countries, making the neighboring countries terrified of him. Therefore, Sahle was also very afraid of his father. Although I can rely on military means to control the country, I am now overwhelmed by the bad geopolitical situation, the Sudan region in the north. It used to be an Egyptian colony. The Cairo authorities, who believed in Islam, had been constantly united with the Ottoman Empire from Constantinople and tried to go south along the Nile River and the Red Sea coast. At that time, I was very distressed by this. After all, I was suppressed by Muslim forces, and I could not stop the development of Islamic tribes in the coastal areas. For this reason, I sent a large number of people to ask for help from Western countries, and visited the 5 major Western countries of Britain, France, Russia, Prussia and Austria. But at that time, It seemed to the European powers that Ethiopia was a place without strategic value. Compared with the Ottoman Empire and Egypt, the inland of East Africa was indeed barren. We don't have the excellent ports of Somalia, Arabia and Kenya. Therefore, it is ridiculous that the cabinet of Queen Victoria of the United Kingdom and Viscount Palmerston did not respond to a request for help. Other countries are even more unwilling to defend the Ottoman Empire and make risky investments. After all, this is to anger Britain and offend the Ottoman Empire and Egypt. To address I sneered, times have changed. Look, the world has changed. Such a barren place in Africa has become a hotbed for European countries, and even the great desert of Mali in the west has not been spared. Child, let me tell you, Europeans are the most cunning. They have a set order for colonizing various places. I know what methods European governments use when they want to annex an eastern country. They will first send missionaries to preach and permeate the hearts of the people, then send consuls to support the missionaries' preaching, and then let the army back up the consuls. He said to Sailor, I told the consuls of the French Empire in Britain and other countries in Ethiopia that we understand their operation methods. I told them that I am not the native king of Hindustan and will not let people fool me like this. I would rather deal directly with the invader's army locally. That's it, I am not the native king of Hindustan and will not let people fool me like this. I would rather deal directly with the army. Just when Tuadris I was about to teach his son again, an urgent military report appeared at this time. Your Majesty, a large-scale Italian army has landed in Eritrea, and it is said that the scale is no less than 20,000. Before Tuadris I could say anything, Crown Prince Saul was looking at the Ethiopian military chief General Sak in front of him with a shocked face. Tuadris I said calmly, distribution. Your Majesty, this time Italy has landed more than 10,000 people in Asmara in addition to the original 5,000 people, and Assab in the east originally had only 2,000 people, and now 10,000 people have landed. 20 or 70,000 people. Tuadris I closed his eyes, and after a long time, he opened them. The great emperor who unified Ethiopia showed his majesty, and said proudly to his son Saul Mariam, Saul, come on. I'll show you how I defeated those bastards in Italy, and let you take over Ethiopia in the future and be baptized. Father, please give me your orders. Sailor looked at his father who was full of pride and responded immediately. Go to southern Kenya and look for George, the person in charge of the Netherlands there, who is also the former leader of the Orange Free State in South Africa, and tell him that we in Ethiopia are willing to help them defend the northern border and support the Netherlands' dominance in Kenya. At the same time, we are willing to cede the territory west of Lake Chau and south of Amino to the Netherlands. The Netherlands has always been interested in Lake Turkana, as I know. We are willing to buy arms support from the Netherlands. At the same time, send people to eastern Somalia to communicate with Prince Frederick Karl of Prussia. Ask Prussia to support us in military training. We are willing to cede the eastern territory from Kermis in the north to the Alamo in the south to Prussia, provided that the two countries sign a 20-year alliance. There are recommendation tickets and monthly tickets for support. Chapter 148 Ethiopian War. Netherlands. William IV was also talking about Ethiopia. To be more precise, he talked about Ethiopia while talking about Kenya. Although these understandings of Tuadris I are simple, they are already precious for a closed-minded indigenous emperor. It was precisely because of this extra vigilance that the British colonial rulers did not dare to have many concerns about Tuadris I. For this reason, the British took two measures to deal with him. One is to avoid direct conflict with him and secretly support local forces that are dissatisfied with his regime. The other is to expand the contradictions between Ethiopia and Egypt and the Ottoman Empire, provoke conflicts between Islam and Judaism, and take advantage of the mutual weakening of both sides to reap the benefits. This move has made it difficult for Tuadris I, who wants to revive Ethiopia, to make progress in recent years, and it is even more difficult to improve the surrounding environment. Thorbecke, Your Majesty, why do you think Italy will definitely take the initiative to attack Ethiopia before Austria? Why? William IV, in the war for hegemony in the Mediterranean region, Italy was neither the opponent of Britain nor France. On the European continent, although Italy had turned the Apennine Peninsula, except for the headquarters of Catholicism, into their territory, and even defeated Austria in the war for Venice, despite the help of France, it also established their position. But this was far from enough to satisfy Italy's Emmanuel II. His ambition was to control the southeastern Mediterranean between Europe and Africa. In order to compare with Napoleon III of France, he also wanted to rely on Libya to develop towards North Africa and East Africa and control East Africa. Therefore, after Italy seized Eritrea, it wanted to seize Somalia. These are all about wanting more North Africa. In addition to Africa, Italy has been actively active in the Balkan Peninsula in recent years, instigating these countries to establish various ties organizations composed of Italy, and increasing its influence on Greece and Hungary in the Danube River basin. However, the latter acted cautiously because they were afraid of causing a backlash from other major powers, especially Austria's strong opposition. Therefore, development to the south is the main axis of Italy. William IV had just been discussing Ethiopia with members of the Privy Council. At this moment, when Mackay Shan came in again after leaving, he brought some not-so-good news. William IV shrugged and said, "Italy has been fooled." Emmanuel II finally couldn't help showing his claws in reaching out to Ethiopia. On January 2, 1863, Victor Emmanuel II delivered a war speech to the nation, publicly announcing that he would annex Ethiopia by force. He said that he had been preparing for this day for 5 years, and he had made careful arrangements for 5 years, and he no longer needed to wait. He asserted that as long as the Italian army, which continued to have an absolute advantage in equipment, entered Ethiopian territory, the indigenous king Tewodros II, who had never taken the European powers seriously, would succumb and surrender. The day after Victor Emmanuel II's speech, he received various inquiries from European countries, as well as a letter of protest from Franz I of Austria, expressing dissatisfaction with Italy's shameless preemptive dispatch of troops when it knew that Austria was going to send troops to Ethiopia, and demanded that Victor Emmanuel II of Italy withdraw the decision. However, is this possible? So the answer Franz I got was naturally a categorical rejection. When European countries saw Italy's move, they all felt that the situation in Africa had entered a very bad cycle, because many people realized that it was different from the past when you occupied it, and now it seemed to be entering another mode. After declaring occupation, it still needs a strong garrison to be considered yours. Italy seemed to have brought the African colonial governance model into a new situation, forcing the powerful countries to slowly move part of their local military strength to the south. Going there was to prevent other countries from seizing their territory, and this made the local European military force also appear in a new pattern, which had an impact on the subsequent European war, which is not discussed for the time being. When European countries responded to Italy's actions against Ethiopia in various ways, the Italian army crossed without declaring war. On January 6, 1863, they went all the way south from Asmara, the largest city in Eritrea, and occupied Mekelle, the largest city in northwestern Ethiopia, on the 9th. According to the battle plan, the Italian army launched an attack on Ethiopia from the east and west. The Western Front was commanded by Alfonso Ferrero La Marmora, the former governor of Milan and current deputy minister of the army, who was in charge of the main attack. His mission was to destroy the Ethiopian army and occupy the territory of the western part of the country near the southern part of Jiangsu. At the same time, he was also prepared to prevent the British from intervening. The Eastern Front was commanded by Giuseppe Garibaldi, the chief of staff of the Italian army. The mission of the Eastern Front was for Giuseppe Garibaldi to lead the 10,000 Italian troops who landed in Assab, plus 2,000 who were originally left in the army, with the support of the navy, to move eastward quickly, capture Djibouti, and then station the Italian navy in this coastal port city, which is Ethiopia's window to the outside world, to block Ethiopia from external maritime support. Then Giuseppe Garibaldi left about 5,000 troops for defense and began to lead 7,000 people to the south to capture Harar. As long as the largest city in eastern Ethiopia was captured, it was almost certain that northern Ethiopia would fall into the hands of Italy. After completing this task on the Eastern Front, Djibouti and Harar can form a line of defense to prevent Prussia in the eastern Somalia direction from intervening in the northern war in Ethiopia. As long as Italy takes Dessex on the Western Front, Italy will have a favorable opportunity to launch a two-line attack on the Ethiopian capital. The city is about to be broken. However, this is the battle plan planned by Emmanuel II and his ministers. At the beginning, everything went well as they planned. The Eastern Front took Djibouti and the Western Front took Dessex. But when Garibaldi wanted to occupy Harar on the Eastern Front, he encountered obstacles. The Ethiopian army was inferior to Italy in terms of manpower and weapons and equipment. On January 10, Italy on the Eastern Front came to occupy Dardua. Seeing that Harare was well defended, the experienced Giuseppe Garibaldi did not attack the city at the first time. Instead, he crossed Harare and attacked Gotha, which was close to the capital, and occupied the small town of Gotha on January 11. Seeing that the people in Harare were uneasy, Giuseppe Garibaldi turned around and shot them in the head again, but he was wrong, and very wrong. When the Italian army launched an attack on the city of Harare on the 13th, more than 5,000 Ethiopian soldiers rose up to resist, killing and wounding more than 3,000 Italian soldiers, and even recaptured Gotha, which had just been lost, when the army led by Giuseppe was stunned. This war seemed to be a turning point. It dealt a heavy blow to the Italian invaders, which made Emmanuel II's plan of a quick victory bankrupt. Because the 7,000 people who went south on the Eastern Front had lost nearly half of their troops before they reached Addis Ababa, the capital of Ethiopia, the Eastern Front could only shrink. This dealt a heavy blow to the invaders. This made Mussolini's plan of a quick victory bankrupt. So Giuseppe could only collect the remaining troops in Dardala, north of Harare, waiting for reinforcements, and hoping that Alfonso Ferrero La Marmora on the Western Front would quickly achieve results. The news here was passed back to Europe, which made Europe stunned. Another European power failed in the war with the indigenous kingdom in Africa. And the defeat was so thorough. In a head-on confrontation, the famous Italian generals Giuseppe and Garibaldi both failed and were defeated by two Idris II. Now, Britain's face is finally better. After all, South Africa has made Viscount Palmerston and Queen Victoria lose face some time ago. Napoleon III smiled at Olivier. Olivier smiled and said, "Yes, who would have thought that Ethiopia was so strong that it defeated Giuseppe, a famous general who had fought in Italy for decades? You know, he had defeated Austria many times before, and he even defeated Austria in the Battle of Venice. He has already been defeated. Austria originally wanted to seize Ethiopia. Will this make Joseph I back down?" Napoleon III shook his head. "I am familiar with Joseph I. This guy is very stubborn. He will not give up easily. He is waiting for Italy to fail, and then Austria will step up to decide the outcome of the battle. He will create a situation where Italy is defeated and Austria is crushed, humiliate Emmanuel II, and rebuild the prestige of the Austrian Empire. With such a rare opportunity, how could this guy give up easily?" Olivier: "So, we are in for a good show." Napoleon III nodded and said, "Of course, Your Excellency Viscount Palmerston. It seems that Italy will lose the race this time." Queen Victoria in London was also observing what happened to Italy in Africa, including the British colonies of Sudan and Egypt. Therefore, every move of Italy there was almost quickly transmitted to London and sent to her and the cabinet. So she summoned Viscount Palmerston. Although Italy was established not long ago, with the support of Cavour, Mazzini and Garibaldi, the three founding heroes, Victor Emmanuel II completed the transformation into a great power, and its strength is not much weaker than Prussia. However, Cavour's death last year has greatly reduced Italy's diplomacy. Without the checks and balances on Victor Emmanuel II, the current king is willful and reckless, so it is reasonable. Why are you looking at me? What you said is also true," Queen Victoria said to Viscount Palmerston unhappily. "Then do you think that Victor Emmanuel II will take Ethiopia when he increases his troops to the south? The Queen is looking down on me." "What do you mean? Who are there around Ethiopia? It would be strange if Italy could take it." Idris II is not a stupid person. This guy is very smart. He knows how to make choices. After all, compared to destroying the country, it is worth paying a little price. We can even see a war between European powers in Africa. Chapter 149. Italy becomes a laughingstock. After the Battle of Harare, Giuseppe Garibaldi decided to suspend the offensive in order to avoid a greater defeat. However, this made Italian Prime Minister Luigi Carlo Ferroni feel the pressure on his shoulders. He was ridiculed by his European counterparts. In addition, he met His Majesty Emmanuel II several times. Although the other party did not blame him, the tone was no longer as friendly as before. So on January 12, 1863, he telegraphed an order, requiring Giuseppe Garibaldi to take Harare as soon as possible and then advance to Addis Ababa. Giuseppe Garibaldi did not obey the order of Prime Minister Luigi, but adopted a policy of appeasement, requiring the Ethiopians in Harare to accept the advanced rule of Italy, which could bring them a better life, instead of living like slaves like now. However, this psychological strategy did not have any effect. The Ethiopians shouted slogans of unyielding to death and cooperated with the army to continue to fight against the Italian invaders. The fighting power of the Italian invaders was greatly weakened by the lack of food and freshwater resources. After the appeasement policy of Giuseppe Garibaldi failed, at the repeated urging of Prime Minister Luigi, when 3,000 people from Djibouti arrived, a 6,500-man army directly launched a general attack on Harar on January 14. As a result, they were met with stubborn resistance from the Ethiopian army commanded by Crown Prince Menelik of Ethiopia. After 3 days of fierce fighting, with a military strength 1-to-1, Giuseppe Garibaldi occupied the city on the evening of January 17, but due to heavy casualties, the troops and nuclear weapons equipment could not be replenished, and they lost the ability to continue to advance to the capital Addis Ababa. At this time, the Western Front was also hindered, because in Dessaix, they met the Ethiopian Army Minister de Bozel, who led 15,000 people to fight against Alfonso Ferrero Lamarmara's 10,000 people, and the other side was still defending the city. Although the weapons were advanced, the gap in manpower was too large. From the beginning, the Italian army was at a disadvantage. This is also the reason why Luigi repeatedly urged the Eastern Front to advance. On January 19, when the royal families of European countries sent royal family members to attend the engagement of William IV of the Netherlands, Italian Prime Minister Luigi, when Italy sent another evil army to the Eastern Front and went south from Djibouti to join Giuseppe Garibaldi's army, Prime Minister Luigi once again sent a telegram ordering Giuseppe Garibaldi to advance to Addis Ababa immediately after occupying Harar. However, Giuseppe Garibaldi once again refused to execute Luigi's order. However, when Emmanuel II's order arrived, the military veteran still executed the king's order. However, before the army was completely contained, when Goda was occupied again, the Ethiopian military-civilian integration model caused the Italian army to lose more than 2,000 people, and it was instantly reduced to 20,000 people. Later, in Misu and Mekelle, the losses added up to more than 5,000. The closer they got, the stronger the resistance, and the loss was about 15,000. When they arrived at Nazareth before Addis Ababa, the Italian army was left with only 15,000 people. On January 25, from 30,000 to now, in just 20 days, more than half of them have been lost. Such a loss has never happened since Giuseppe Garibaldi joined the army. Even when he resisted Austrian rule, there was no such a big loss. The strength of the African natives can be seen. At this time, Europe looked at the Italian invasion with a joke. The Western Front was still holding back the 20,000 Ethiopian troops there intact, but the Eastern Front could not grasp such an opportunity. Many experts felt sorry for this and were also shocked by Ethiopia's fighting power. They were all wondering whether Italy had encountered a strong opponent or was just too weak. But when the Italian newspaper Milan News reported a piece of news, all countries were stunned. Because the report said that there were Prussians training the Ethiopian army, and many of the weapons they used were purchased from the Netherlands. As this piece of news was read by more and more people, other newspapers followed suit. All countries finally understood that Ethiopia had received support from Prussia and the Netherlands after paying a lot of price. When Prime Minister Bismarck was asked about this in Berlin, he said, "I don't know what you want to know, but I can tell you that Prussia had been developing relations between the two countries long before Italy attacked Ethiopia. In order to conduct military exchanges with us and convince Prussia of their sincerity, Ethiopia had even handed over a lot of places in the eastern part of the country to Prussia. And Prussia, in the spirit of reciprocity, began to teach Ethiopia self-defense military training half a year ago. As a result, everyone probably knows it now. Let me reiterate that we are not targeting anyone or any country. This is a deal. Remember, we are willing to trade, including anyone. What Prime Minister Bismarck means is that even if Italy wants, Prussia is willing to send instructors to Italy to teach Prussian experience. Is that right? Yes, you can understand it that way. When asked about this, the Dutch Prime Minister Thorbecke said, "The Netherlands has a very wide range of trade. We now have trades with various countries, including the United Kingdom. We are doing business with both the north and the south of the United States. Some time ago, we just sold 10,000 guns and 10 cannons to the north. The south is also buying from the United Kingdom and asking us for prices. Doing business is a matter of course. It is a fool not to make money, right? The Dutch military industry is huge. Not only in the homeland, but also in the Far East, our arms business is good. Some time ago, France purchased 100,000 bullets from our arms dealers in East India because of a shortage of ammunition during the South Vietnam War. For this reason, we have also created a lot of jobs. As the global arms business grows, we have begun to develop various arms production chains on the Australian continent. The arms produced there will be built into arsenals specifically for buyers in Africa, the Far East, North and South America. The arms in Ethiopia this time are arms produced in Jakarta, the Dutch East Indies in the Far East. As for the war between Italy and Ethiopia, we will not get involved. We are just doing business. Just doing business? That's all? Selling arms in such large quantities, and not getting involved in the war? The words of the Dutch Prime Minister made Italian King Emmanuel II and Prime Minister Luigi so angry that they both had the urge to curse. Bismarck's words at least stated the time, which was set half a year ago, but the Netherlands still openly stated that they didn't mind the time point. It was obvious that the Netherlands didn't care about Italy's reaction, which made them look very embarrassed. Chapter 150 Creating an Opportunity for France. 1863. All European countries were watching closely the development of the situation in Ethiopia. At this time, Austria collected 310 steamships and traditional sailing ships of various sizes from its homeland, and transported a large number of 30,000 Nigerian coolies from Nigeria to the local area, providing Prince Auersperg with labor to accelerate the expansion of the engineering corps. In addition to people, there were also purchased horses, mules, and camels. There were even Indian war elephants purchased from the colonies ruled by the British Indian Governor's Office. Accompanying them were reporters from European countries, who brought the most advanced photography technology of the era. Obviously, Austria still had the practice of being ambitious and wanted to show European countries how Austria was advancing its rule in Ethiopia. To establish the reputation of the Austrian Empire. On December 10, 1863, in view of Tewodros II's refusal to release people, the Austrian army began to advance towards the inland Desse fortress. This city in the north-central part of Ethiopia is considered the central city leading to the north from Addis Ababa, the capital of Ethiopia. Because of its rugged terrain, it is easy to defend but difficult to attack. At the beginning, the Italian Western Front was deadlocked here for a long time, so the international journalists accompanying them took a lot of photos, so that they could be used as pictures in newspapers in European countries to give a close-up of the Italian pass with countless casualties. In particular, they felt that they needed to write more about the detailed description of the difficult terrain to be conquered by foreign enemies, because they were about to witness the attack started by Austria. So under the attack of naval heavy artillery, these international journalists soon saw that this city with 20,000 Ethiopian troops stationed was slowly broken. Afterwards, the Ethiopian army, which could not bear the heavy artillery attack, fought head-on with the Austrian army. The cruelty on the battlefield made these veteran war correspondents a little silent. They were not the first time to see this scene. In every foreign battlefield in Britain, they would send accompanying reporters to make various records, so as to report to the country and let the people in Britain know the situation of the front battlefield at any time. Austria's confidence was indeed justified. This time, 30,000 Austrian troops attacked the 20,000 Ethiopian troops, and finally paid the price of 6,000 people to take the city of Desse. The Ethiopian army finally retreated under the attack of heavy artillery. 20,000 people, leaving 12,000 corpses and seriously injured people, retreated to the small town of Efesin next to the Awash River in the south. And Austria became famous for this, with casualties less than 1 to 2, which is a high ratio. This is much better than Italy's almost equal casualty rate. For a time, Italy was shot again while lying down. Italians in almost every occasion in Europe have become the object of ridicule, and the heads of Italians are almost drooping to their crotches. Austria and Vienna are really proud of this wave. No wonder the German Confederation parliamentarians are much quieter this time. Prussian Army Chief of Staff Moltke followed up. At the next meeting, I think the parliamentarians in Vienna will be very excited again. It seems that we really need to take action. Austria must be weakened and cannot be allowed to continue to expand its reputation. Prussian King William I and Prime Minister Bismarck also nodded in agreement. William I said to Bismarck, however, how to stop the other party, the means and skills of the attack are the most important to grasp. Your Majesty, don't worry. Compared with the unrest in Austria's colony Nigeria, Prussia's governance in Africa has already entered a stable stage. Nigeria. Moltke and William I looked at Bismarck in confusion. Bismarck said mysteriously, The situation in East Africa has attracted all the attention of Europe. In this case, we can start in the Gulf of Guinea in West Africa. Nigeria is too large. It is not just us Prussia that is unhappy. Austria has occupied this fertile land in Africa, and other countries are also dissatisfied with Austria. Tsarist Russia. Only Tsarist Russia would have ambitions. This is Moltke's idea. Wrong, it is France. Bismarck shook his head and denied it, saying, France has long had ambitions to open up the North-South Channel. Austria has long been dissatisfied after occupying Nigeria. Now, while Austria's military power is being held back in Ethiopia, it has already planned to go south from Niger. As he said, Bismarck took out a piece of paper and said, "This is the intelligence from France, which shows that France is doing this. This is the cabinet intelligence, which William I has not seen either." As a military official, Moltke also saw it for the first time. This is the intelligence arranged by Prussia and several dies of the French government. Seeing the many deployments of Napoleon III, several people understood that this was not something that had just started in 1 or 2 days. Obviously, France had been planning for a long time. After Bismarck saw the two men finished reading, he said, "Therefore, in the East, we don't need to join the war, but we must put enough pressure on Austria to enable Austria to deploy more troops to the edge of the Red Sea, so as to break Napoleon III's scruples." The two nodded and agreed with Bismarck's idea. Napoleon III was ambitious, but lacked courage, so only by showing him the hope of victory could he be moved to do so. Both of them sighed that Bismarck really understood Napoleon III's heart. On December 15, 1863, Moltke, one of the highest representatives of the Prussian military and the chief of staff of the Prussian army, held a military press conference in Berlin. Due to the deterioration of the surrounding situation, Prussia's security was affected. He announced that in Somalia, the Prussian colony in East Africa, on the basis of the original 200 million garrisons, he decided to increase his troops by another 20,000. These soldiers will be deployed in a new way. They will be stationed in Hargeisa, near the northern port of Ethiopia. Many people were confused by the sudden news that 20,000 people were deployed in Hargeisa, next to Djibouti, and many people noticed what Prussia said. What is Djibouti in Ethiopia? Obviously, this means that Prussia does not agree with Austria's occupation status, but still agrees with Ethiopia's rule. Moreover, the location where 20,000 people are deployed can still threaten the Austrian army's retreat route, next to the port of Djibouti. This is obviously done deliberately by the Prussian military. The purpose is naturally to create security risks for the Austrian army, so that they can continue to march into Ethiopia with peace of mind. This made all European countries understand that Prussia and Austria, the two heroes in the German Confederation, finally began to stop suppressing the disputes between the two countries, and have expanded them to international status disputes without concealment. Obviously, it has become worse on the surface. We are only protecting our interests. We oppose any action that damages Prussia's interests, including territory and economic interests. Ethiopia is an important market for our Prussian goods. We cannot lose this great market. Moltke said in a resounding voice. Therefore, we cannot watch our market disappear. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.